Cultfigga TV. Revolutionary salute. Revolutionary salute. Like, share, subscribe. Welcome to the House of Revolution. You know I'm your humble host, the Yao Ming of Revolution, and I got a World War III alert. We got a World War III alert, but before we get into that, be sure to wipe your feet. That means hit the like button. Like, share, subscribe, support the platform, y'all. Well, they should be talking about this all over the news, but they're not. They're not talking about the defense alliance that Russia just signed with Iran, meaning any attack on Iran will be World War III. Let's get into the information tonight. Salute.
Now let's look at Moscow. The Russian capital is hosting a special guest, Iran's President Masoud Pezeshkian. He's there to sign a deal, a comprehensive strategic partnership agreement between Iran and Russia. And this deal has the world on alert because it's between two of the West's biggest rivals, Iran and Russia. Pezeshkian landed in Moscow earlier today. He was welcomed with the usual pomp and pageantry. He even took part in a wreath-laying ceremony at the Flame of the Unknown Soldier. Quite the sight. An Iranian president honoring Russian war heroes. The West won't be happy with that. Once that was out of the way, Pezeshkian began his meetings. His first one was with Russia's Prime Minister, Mikhail Mishustin. But let's face it, that was just the teaser. The real talks began a bit later inside the Kremlin. That's where President Vladimir Putin sat down with Masoud Pezeshkian. Take a look at this.
Dear Mr. President, dear friends, we are very glad to see you all in Moscow. Welcome. Your visit today is of particular importance because we will not only have the opportunity to discuss all areas of our cooperation, but we will also sign a major basic agreement between Russia and Iran on a comprehensive strategic partnership.
See, this will be a game changer in the Middle East now. If Russia stepping in and saying, okay, because they didn't have these agreements yet. They just was, now it's on paper, it's legal. They just had it understood that, hey, we'll help y'all out if NATO or the U.S. or Israel attack. But now it's on paper. Putin is legal with anything he do. NATO flooded Ukraine with all those weapons to kill all those Russians. They're going to regret doing that.
A comprehensive strategic partnership between Russia and Iran. They're talking about their relationship. They're taking it to the next level in every field.
I am confident that today, after signing our big agreement, which covers all areas of activity of the two countries, including in the sphere of culture and economy, as well as humanitarian relations, I am confident that this will give a great impetus to the development of bilateral relations, and this will become a solid foundation for further movement forward.
That's a lot of diplomatic jargon. Let's break it down for you. What is this agreement and how will it change things? First, look at the existing situation, the existing ties. Russia and Iran already have very good ties. They've been working together for years. In fact, they already had an agreement in place. It was signed in 2001. However, this new deal is an upgrade. It will last for 20 years and cover a range of issues. Let's start with trade. It's been on the rise. Putin said bilateral trade was up by 17% in 2024, and he wants to build on this. The new deal aims to give trade a boost, possibly with the help of better railway connections, like the International North-South Transport Corridor. This railway line is supposed to start in Russia, go through Azerbaijan, cross Iran's heartland, and end in the Persian Gulf. And that is just the rail part of the corridor. After hitting the Gulf, Russian goods will take to the seas and eventually make their way to Mumbai in India. That's the plan anyway. And with the new agreement, Iran and Russia seem to be promoting this corridor. Next, we have nuclear power, civilian, not military.
The agreement that we have in place for the nuclear power station, the work is progressing well.
And they don't need nuclear weapons anymore if they just need nuclear energy. Signing this deal with Russia means they're going to be up under Russia's nuclear weapons umbrella. Meaning, if you attack Iran, you might as well attack Russia because you're going to fight both of them.
And the related agreements that we have in this area will be finalized during our meetings and will be actioned.
Russia already built one nuclear power plant in Iran back in 2013. It is working on another. And the new deal will speed up construction. So we have covered trade and energy. What about military ties? Well, they won't see much of an impact because the two militaries are already working together, especially since Russia invaded Ukraine in 2022. Iran is accused of supplying drones and missiles to Russia, although Tehran denies this. Then there's Syria. Remember, Iran and Russia worked together there to prop up the Assad regime. So military cooperation has been going on for years. Putin and Pezeshkian said that military ties would improve like everything else. But what wasn't mentioned may be of greater interest. You see, Russia has been shoring up its alliances for a while. Last year, it signed treaties with North Korea and Belarus. Both included mutual defense clauses. Russia promised to intervene if the two countries were invaded, North Korea and Belarus. But the new deal with Iran does not seem to have that clause.
Yes, it does.
And this was made public before the signing of the deal. Iran said it was not interested in this mutual defense. And this will come as a relief to the West, especially the US and Israel. The Iran-Israel rivalry is not going anywhere. The last thing the world needs is an excuse for Russia and the US to fight directly. That's all that we know about the new Iran-Russia agreement for now. We'll probably get more details in the days and weeks to come. But we already know one thing for sure. Russia and Iran are both Western adversaries. They have both suffered under Western sanctions, so they're now putting up a united front and deepening ties to counter the West. Let's see if their plan works.
From breaking
January 17th, and our friend Larry Johnson is back with us. Welcome back, Larry.
Always a pleasure to be here.
Let's get started, Larry, with the Middle East, the ceasefire between Israel and Palestinians and Palestine. Or Hamas, how do you see the situation in Israel? We know that Ben Gvir is not happy with this situation. He wants to leave the government, and he's trying to convince Smotrich to leave the government. But so far, we've learned that Smotrich is gonna stay with the government, and Ben Gvir gonna leave the government. And how do you see the situation of Netanyahu there?
Well, as far as Smotrich staying or going, I think he's probably going to go. His initial reaction was not strongly against, but then within a day or two, he was very as outspoken as Ben Gvir. This may very well bring down the Netanyahu government, at least unless some other members who have not been part of the coalition step up to join. This is a reminder that there's not unity of thought and purpose in Israel. They're still pretty divided, at least on some issues. As far as killing Palestinians, getting rid of the Palestinians, I think the Israelis almost across the board are united on that, and that's the problem. There is no recognition by the Zionists of the Palestinians having a right to exist. Whether the Palestinians are Christian or Muslim, it does not matter. Even though the Palestinians have inhabited that area long before the current Jewish population that's shown up was there. And, people don't like to hear that, but, that's the fact. So this, I don't think this deal is going to stick at all. They're already talking about, okay, after phase one, after we get some of the hostages released, and we're going to go back on the offensive. That's where it gets interesting because, Israel talks tough and insists that they got the best military in the Middle East and in the world, perhaps. Well, but they've been fighting and trying to destroy Hamas for going on 15 months now. And despite Israel having every military advantage, they've been unable to destroy Hamas. If anything, Hamas has grown stronger, attracted more recruits, become more popular. And Israel, by contrast, has become more isolated. So the hopes of this ceasefire turning into something more enduring hinges in part on what the Saudis do, and the Jordanians, the Emiratis from the United Arab Emirates. If they hold firm to their position that there's not going to be any normalization of relationships with Israel or the United States, for that matter, unless the rights of the Palestinian people are addressed and a Palestinian state is created. If they hold true to that, then I think that's going to have some influence over Donald Trump, because Trump is not a committed Zionist. Trump is a committed Trumpian. He's going to do what's going to solidify his reputation and legacy. And he's not going to sacrifice his reputation for Benjamin Netanyahu or anyone else in Israel, for that matter. So, I think he's pretty, let's call him pragmatic or dogmatic on that particular point. So this, we'll see how the hostage release proceeds. There is, we have to acknowledge that here in the United States, and particularly this group that Trump has appointed, Pete Hegseth to nominated for Secretary of Defense, Marco Rubio as Secretary of State, Michael Waltz as National Security Advisor. These guys are all what I call Christian Zionists. Boy, they are just hard over. Oh, we got to support Israel no matter what, and Israel does nothing wrong, and Israel's good, Palestinian bad. So that attitude's not going away anytime soon here in the United States either. And what's shocking, and the rest of the world should understand this, is after 14 months of slaughtering women and children in Gaza,
Disgusting.
Israel's standing at least among a significant portion of the American public hasn't deteriorated at all. Now there is a generational problem cropping up, because a lot of the people who are 30 years of age and younger, between 18 and 30, they are increasingly on the side of the Palestinians, not the Israelis. So it is, the prospects for the enduring peace out of this very low.
It's so amazing that Joe Biden, in his latest interview, he was talking about when this conflict started in the aftermath of October 7th. Here is what he said, Larry, in terms of they knew what they were going to do in Gaza. Here is what he said, Larry. And he tries to legitimize, by the way, what Israel did with what has happened in 1945.
I went to Israel immediately after their attack by Hamas, 8 days later, whatever it was. And I told him we were going to help. And I said, but Bibi, I said, you can't be carpet bombing these communities. And he said to me, well, you did it. You carpet bomb, not his exact words, but you carpet bomb Berlin. You dropped a nuclear weapon. You killed thousands of innocent people because you had to in order to win a war. I said, but that's why we came up with the UN. New deals by which what would we do relative to civilians and military.
So he was comparing 21st century war tactics, battle tactics, with World War II.
Well, what he was really doing is he was going after me for saying you can't indiscriminately bomb civilian areas, even if the bad guys are there. Even if the bad guys there, you can't take out 2, 10, 12, 1,500 people, innocent people, in order to get the one bad guy. And he made a legitimate argument. His perspective said, look, these are the guys that kill my people. These are the guys that are all over in these tunnels. Nobody had any idea the miles of tunnels are down there. It's amazing what they built. And they're sometimes 200 feet under the ground. Well, the way to get to them is take out the places where they were under which they got to the tunnels. And so that's the first time I had the discussion about bombing civilian areas was when I went over after the 9/11, after the massacre that occurred.
So on that first trip, 10, 11 days after October 7th, you already raised the issues of how to get to a ceasefire.
Well, not a ceasefire, how to prevent innocent death.
Yes.
And then I pushed really, really hard for more humanitarian aid to go in.
It was a legitimate argument, as he mentioned, the way that Netanyahu was dealing with him.
Well, what do you mean by legitimate?
Joe Biden is doing
this is called, you're justifying criminal activity. The United States was totally unjustified in its bombing of civilian areas throughout Germany and Japan, destroying the civilian population. I mean, but we excused it. I mean, look, the reality when you stack up history, the United States pillaging, murdering of native Indian tribes here in the United States as part of its creation, as our creation as a nation. It stands as a stain on America. We massacred Indian civilians, and we always presented the Indians as sometimes as the bad guys. Apart from the Thanksgiving when they saved the Pilgrims, as the story goes. But how dare they attack settlers? Well, we were invaders. So when people react to an invasion,
this is a fact,
or react to oppression, it depends on who gets to tell the story. That whether it's justified or not, legitimate or not. The Netanyahu and his Zionist cronies, they believe in what I call the mythology of the Old Testament, the Torah, that they are uniquely selected by God, even though when you get into the language of the Torah, God's name, there's Elohim, there's Yahweh, it's actually a sort of a confused picture, but they've convinced themselves, and they convinced a lot of Christians that, oh yeah, this supreme being has given them exclusive rights to this territory, and not only that, told them that they can kill anybody that gets in their way, and it's okay because God says, hey. Well, if you believe that, then it's easy to fall into this whole narrative. I don't believe it. I think it's one of the biggest lies of history, in my view, and it's a scam. and it's a scam from this standpoint that the writing of the Old Testament was done by Jews who were in exile. They were in what used to be, what we now know as Iran, but was a Babylonian empire. That's where they wrote this. They wrote about it out of oral tradition, and they said, "Well, hey, God, this is from God. Trust me." Once human beings have a real gullibility in getting told a story about some sort of divine external intervention, and but once they latch onto it, boy, they don't let go of it, and it becomes a premise for a lot of death and destruction. You see it. We see it in Judaism. We've seen it in Christianity. We've seen it in Islam. So it's not one particular religion that has a monopoly on this. So for as long as we understand that Israel's intent with respect to the Palestinian people is to exterminate them, they have no right to live there. As long as we understand that, then we've got to say, okay, we've at least identified what the problem is. Are we willing to accept that? Now, up to this point, Netanyahu has realized that he's got Joe Biden in his hip pocket. Joe Biden's bought and paid for. Biden, when he was a member of the Senate, he was the largest recipient of funds from Jewish groups like American Israeli Public Affairs Committee, AIPAC. So, he could have brought this to an end, 12, 14 months ago. All you had to do is tell Bibi, if you drop one more bomb on a hospital, on a mosque, on a school, you're done. We're cutting you off. There will be no more bombs from America. But what did Biden do? He sent him more bombs. So this is, but what we've also learned is despite sending him all those bombs, the Palestinians are still standing. They're still intact.
You remember we talked about the two conflicts that Donald Trump had to deal with before 2024 presidential election. We were talking about it. You said the most difficult one is this one, is in the Middle East. And here Donald Trump comes even before taking office, tries to make a ceasefire, as Haaretz reported that the Trump's envoy in Qatar forced Netanyahu to sign the deal, to accept the deal.
Right. Stephen Witkoff is his name.
Yeah. What was the importance of this for Donald Trump to start with?
Well, I proceed from the belief that people like to dismiss Trump as just a narcissist. Well, please show me a president that hasn't been, quote, a narcissist. So somebody that wants to be viewed in history as having been a good person, having been an effective person, having been a good leader. Trump, his personality type is he tries to get along with everybody. He wants to be liked, and he's not going to take actions necessarily that will put him in a light that will make him unlikable. So he wants to have a relationship with the Saudis, with the Gulf Arabs, the Emiratis, the Omanis, the Kuwaitis. Also, he's very strongly in favor of Israel. He has, I think he genuinely wants to conclude this Abraham agreement or the Abraham Accord to secure a peace between Israel and the Arabs, the Muslim states, and in doing so, also create a Palestinian state. I know a lot of people believe that because he got, he reportedly Miriam Adelson, the widow of Sheldon Adelson, wealthy billionaire, Jewish guy out of Las Vegas, maybe promised him 100 million. Then I heard that she only delivered 50 million, but still 50 million. That Trump was going to do everything that basically be at her beck and call. If we've learned anything about Donald Trump over the last, not just 8 years, the last 20 years, nobody owns him. He still does his own thing. And, that was exemplified here when he sent Stephen Witkoff, who on paper is an Orthodox Jew, on paper is like a diehard supporter of Israel. But he showed up and, as they said, Netanyahu said, "Oh, you can't meet with you Friday because it's a Sabbath." He's praying. Oh, right. And Witkoff basically said, "I don't give a damn. We're going to meet." And they met. And, he apparently laid it out to Bibi, do this or else. So, everyone's trying to, put their own little spin on it. But the reality was Trump's, whatever Witkoff said to Netanyahu was sufficient to move Netanyahu to accept an agreement that had already been on the table for the last 12 months. And he finally came around to it. I don't see Trump. I see Trump trying to cobble together a deal, and in cobbling and putting that deal together, he doesn't make saving Israel a priority, or is catering to this settler, ultra religious group of crazies, the Ben Gavirs and the Smotriches. So it's, he's going to carve out a deal, I believe, and it may or may not necessarily favor Israel. Now, we've heard Michael Waltz, I think. I don't know if you've played the tape yet, but basically they said, well, yeah, if Hamas doesn't live up to this agreement, Israel will go back in. Well, Hamas is going to live up to the agreement, but Israel's going to look for an excuse to say that they haven't, so that they can go back on the attack. Again, I can't emphasize enough. They want to eliminate the Palestinians from Gaza. They don't want them to stay. They must go. And that issue is going to continue to haunt Trump through his presidency, and we'll see if he's able to, maybe bring an end to it. I think he could bring an end to it, but it would require telling Netanyahu and telling the religious Zionists, no, the Palestinians stay, and the Palestinians are going to have land, and they're going to have a country to call their own.
There are many people, Larry, who are supporting Palestinians, but are not happy with the ceasefire. They're saying that Israel is getting prepared to attack even harder in the future. That's why they're not happy with the situation. But after all, Larry, we know that the situation in Gaza was so unbelievable, was so dire. That's why this ceasefire would help them. And we saw the trucks going to Gaza helping people.
How could Israel attack harder? They can't. We've already seen what Israel can do. They're great at killing unarmed civilians and destroying infrastructure because they're not faced with any kind of air defense system at all. In spite of that, in particular over this last week, I think one of the things that led provided an impetus for concluding this agreement. The Israelis started suffering, pretty serious casualties with killed and wounded over a 3-day period. There were like 10 Israeli soldiers killed, which was, people say, well, that's not a lot in light of the, Israelis killing 50 to 100 Palestinians a day. But for Israel, it is a lot. And the Israelis place no value on Palestinian lives, but they place enormous value on Israeli lives. Because they are a relatively small country. And I've used the analogy just to help people try to understand this. If you take a major city like New York City with 8-9 million people, and in any given year, if you may have 4 or 5 police killed on the job. Well, here in a year, Israel's the size of New York City, essentially, and it's had close to 800 people killed. And when you factor in the number, from October 7th, coupled with the war since, a lot have killed, a lot wounded, much more wounded. And then the suicide rate among Israeli soldiers is going up. So it's taking a toll. This is not Israel's pursuit of genocide is not cost-free. It comes with a terrible price. And the soldiers on the front line that have something of a conscience are the ones who are going to be haunted by the images of the children that they've killed and the women that they've killed. There's no honor in that. None whatsoever. And so those emotional problems will continue to haunt the Israelis if they renew combat operations.
When you see somebody like Ben Gvir talking about that this is a total defeat, this is a surrender to Hamas, this deal, what's in his mind, in your opinion? Because as you mentioned, the situation with their army is not that good, and their economy is dealing with huge difficulties, and they're literally dependent on the United States.
Yeah.
I can argue not as same as Ukraine, but it's not that far from Ukraine. They're totally dependent on the United States in terms of the arms, in terms of the aid coming from the United States to Israel. How is that working in the mind of these people who are suggesting the continuation of the conflict on the part of Israelis, like Ben Gvir, who knows everything about Israel?
Have you ever lent a family member or friend money? Where they were excuse me, they're having trouble getting by, and basically they're dependent upon you. Now, you don't do that because you're wanting them to tell you how great a person you are and thanking you all the time. You do it because you see the need. However, you also comes with an expectation that they at least are grateful. But what happens if that person giving you money just basically is telling you to go screw off? You don't have the right to tell me what to do. And that's been that's been the Gvir in this crowd. They feel that they're entitled to this money. They're entitled to the support from the United States owes it to them, and you must give it up. And so there is an arrogance and a blind ideology on their part that they see nothing but the elimination of the Palestinians as their top priority, and that if anything, the United States is obligated by God to support them. So there's, you're not going to sit down and have a rational discussion with these people and say, hey, come on, can we step back and can we we reason this out? Can you at least acknowledge that these Palestinians are human beings? Untermensch, subhuman, not even on par with animals. That's why you can kill them. Just like you'd quash a bug, step on an insect. That's how this crowd, the Ben Gvirs, the Smotrich, view the Palestinians. So there's, there is no foundation for peace, for negotiations. From their standpoint, it's got to be the war.
I don't know if you saw the clip that the reporter is asking Joe Biden, who made this deal happen? And you or Donald Trump? He said, are you joking? It's the way that he's responded, of course me.
Of course, yeah.
For more than a year, Israel is doing whatever they have been doing in Gaza, and right now he tries to get the credit from the ceasefire.
Yeah, are you shocked by that? I mean, come on. This is, this is typical. This is what makes someone like Biden so despicable. The reality, and I'm not saying this because I'm a big Trump fan. That
Shalom, family.
But Trump's intervention was decisive. It brought this deal to the front. And now, can Trump really deliver on a comprehensive deal that would provide the Palestinians with a state? Because Trump's made some promises as well to Arab Americans. No, not just to cater to this the Jewish crazies, but is he going to deliver for the Palestinians as well? We'll see.
Antony Blinken had a meeting with the reporters to talk and discuss as his final sort of move with the press. Here is Matt Miller trying to remove the people who were going to ask tough questions about Gaza. Matt Miller removing Sam Husseini from the scene. Yeah.
We are being reborn. It's also a moment of historic possibility.
You can leave, sir.
Again, I'm happy to address questions.
No,
I
want to answer
look forward to answering questions. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. I look forward to answering questions. Thank you.
Sir, would you like to be escorted out? Go away. You don't have to.
Thank you. I look forward to answering questions in a minute.
I'm not a potted plant.
Everyone will have an opportunity to ask questions in just a minute. Thank you.
Salute, family.
You pontificate about a free press. You pontificate about a free press. You are hurting me. You are hurting me. You are hurting me. I'm asking questions after being told by Matt Miller that he will not answer my questions until I'm asking questions. Wasn't the point of the May 31st statement to block the ICJ orders? You blocked the ICJ orders.
Please still respect the process.
Oh, respect the process. Respect the process. Well, everybody from Amnesty International, to the ICJ, saying that Israel's doing genocide and extermination, and you're telling me to respect the process. Criminal. Why aren't you in The Hague?
Yeah, no, it's disgraceful. But look at those other reporters. They sit there. Hey, drag him out. It's not me. They should have been standing up saying, "But stop this. Stop this now." Matt Miller. These are disgraceful human beings. They're culpable. The blood of the Palestinians, the dead children, are upon them. On them. And that's why if there is a God, if there is a divine being that issues a judgment on people based on their lives and what they did, then, these folks are going to have some interesting questions to answer. They're complicit with this. They've enabled it. And here's Miller, United States. Oh, we're land of the free, home of the brave. We're all in favor of humor. And then they're dragging reporters out for asking questions. It's not a violation of the law. It's just, offended them. I mean, it's shameful. But, it tells you who they are. There shouldn't be any confusion about who they are. They're tyrants, authoritarians. Will Trump be any better? I don't know. We'll see. You could actually make the case that during Trump's first presidency, he faced some incredibly hostile questioning from the press, and never once did he have them drug out, treated like that, manhandled.
For 4 years, he was
yeah,
treated that way.
Yeah. So here we see Blinken, and with that, despicable spokesman Matt Miller. Good God. You call him Count Chocula. He looks like the character Nosferatu from the original Dracula movie. But
let me play another clip of Max Blumenthal, which is so important to me because he's so courageous the way that he's talking with Anthony Blinken, Larry.
Greater respect, even greater appreciation for you asking the tough questions, for you holding us to account, being on the receiving end. Sometimes that's not always the most comfortable thing, not always the most enjoyable thing, but it is the most necessary thing.
300 reporters in Gaza were on the receiving end of your bombs. Why did you keep the bombs flowing when we had a deal in May?
I'm happy to address
questions.
We
all knew we had a deal. Everyone in this room knows we had a deal, Tony, and you kept the bombs flowing.
I'm happy to address
Why did you
questions when we get a
sacrifice the
chance.
rules-based order on the mantle of your commitment to Zionism? Why did you allow my friends to be massacred? Why did you allow my friends' homes in Gaza to be destroyed when we had a deal in May? You helped destroy our religion, Judaism, by associating it with fascism. You waved the white flag before Netanyahu. You waved the white flag before Israeli fascism.
I look forward to taking questions when I get a chance to
Father-in-law was an
finish my
Israel
statement.
lobbyist. Your grandfather was an Israel lobbyist. Are you compromised by Israel? Why did you allow the Holocaust of our time to happen? How does it feel to have your legacy be genocide? How does it feel to have your legacy be genocide? You too, Matt. You smirked through the whole thing every day. You smirked through a genocide.
Thank you.
Yeah. And people need to remember that Max Blumenthal, he's a Jew, and many Jewish people are supporting Palestine. And
yeah, that's why this always has to be drawn as a distinction between Zionists versus Jews. Because Max is not the only person who is a Jew that is speaking out against these atrocities. Jeffrey Sachs as well. Aaron Mate is another one. Norman Finkelstein. So, not necessarily an overwhelming majority, but it's still a significant number of, people that have, reputations and are
influential people.
Huh?
Influential people.
Yeah, absolutely. So, this, what fascinates me is how the United States, on the one hand, we get all, get our panties in a knot over foreign meddling in our internal political affairs. By God, those foreigners need to stay out. But when it comes to Israel, boy, we allow everything to go on. I mentioned it before, the current member of the House of Representatives, who's going to be chairman of the Foreign Affairs Committee. He's got pictures of himself wearing an Israeli military uniform. Now, could you imagine how the United States normally react if the chairman of the Foreign Relations Committee or Foreign Affairs Committee was wearing a Russian army uniform, a North Korean army uniform, a Chinese army uniform, or, hell, a French or British, we'd go, wait a second. This is America. This is not, pick your country. But, the United States have become slaves to the Zionist cause. And I think it's really, and the only reason is we're all tied up in this religious determinism that God said they're the chosen people. And God prophesied that in the last days, that they'll reestablish the kingdom of Israel. And we've got, this is determined by God. And so we excuse sin. We excuse the most ungodly acts by claiming that, oh yeah, this is God's will. I'm not anti-religious, but the hypocrisy of this just stinks from my perspective.
Larry, here is a survey done by a pro-Israeli organization that shows that anti-Semitism has increased since 2014 to 2024, has doubled, in fact. And you, Larry, do you see this sort of increase, and is that related to what Netanyahu and his ilk are doing in Israel?
Well, as long as you get to define that anti-Semitism is anybody that speaks out against Jews murdering Palestinians, you're anti-Semitic. Yeah, I am. Absolutely. If that's your qualification, I am anti-Semitic to the core. Now, does that mean I hate Jews? Absolutely not. So they've tried to confuse the issue, because the fact of the matter is the Palestinians are Semites. So to call them to be anti-Semitic, it means you're anti-Palestinian? Actually, you can make the case that the Jews are anti-Semitic by their killing of the Semitic people that are Palestinian. Yeah, these kinds of labels are useless or meaningless. It's just it's just a device to try to shut down argument, discussion, and protest.
Larry, the other issue, the other important matter today is the conflict between the United States and China. And we've learned that Donald Trump talked with Xi, and Donald Trump is talking about President Xi and I, Donald Trump, will do everything possible to make the world more peaceful and safe. Here is Donald Trump coming to power before 2024 presidential election. Everybody was talking, he's going to have a big fight in the Middle East. He's going to go after China, fighting China in Taiwan. I don't see that coming, even between the United States and China.
No, his instincts are anti-war. That's true. And I know from, a friend of mine was involved with the discussions about killing General Soleimani, the Iranian. And Trump was, Trump basically got steamrolled. He had brought in what I'll call strong enough personalities, the likes of Bolton and Pompeo, who were ultimately able to, and General Mattis at the time, I believe he was still Secretary of Defense, that they were strong enough to sway Trump. Now, while Trump has surrounded himself with people who are ideologically in sync with some of the with the Pompeos and the Boltons, Michael Waltz, Marco Rubio, Pete Hegseth, they're not strong enough personalities to overcome and really bully Trump into doing something aggressive like that. So Trump, Trump's peace instincts, I think, will ultimately prevail, or they should. Let me put it this way. Trump wants to go down in history as a great president. He's always, he's insecure in that regard. Always telling about what a great job he did, and this was the best ever, the biggest ever. So that's a real part. We can't discount that and pretend that that's not real. It's real. If he allows himself to be enticed or coerced into military action against Russia, against China, against Iran, it will destroy his presidency and he will be a failure. I've written that he's going to be this will be a historic presidency. Whether good or bad remains to be seen, but it will be historic. If you will, I'm sort of betting on Trump's narcissism. I'm betting on the fact that he wants to be liked and he wants people to think well of him. And to that end, he's not going to pursue policies that are going to promote war and, damage his legacy. We'll see.
As you mentioned, one of the other conflicts that many people were concerned of was the Trump's policy. As we know, many of these people who are going to work with Donald Trump are pro-Israelis, pro-Zionists, I don't know how we can call them. They are in favor of a direct war with Iran. Mm-hmm. But if when you see the ceasefire between Hamas and Israel, is that a sign that Donald Trump wants a war with Iran?
Well, no. In fact, let's recognize that in crafting this deal, the ceasefire, Iran actually played a role behind the scenes. It's been acknowledged sort of indirectly, but clearly they played a role in persuading Hamas, do this. I think that has, at a minimum, bought Iran some goodwill among the Gulf Arabs. To say that, hey, Iran's not out there stirring the pot for war. It's trying to help promote peace. The Zionists and their supporters here in the United States firmly believe that Israel has destroyed Iran's air defense system. They really believe that. That all Israel's got to do is just launch an attack to knock out Iran's capability on the nuclear front. Well, Friday, a few hours ago, President Pezeshkian signed security agreements with Vladimir Putin. Security agreements encompass both political, economic, and military security. One of those is Russia's already inside Iran, helping augment the Bushehr nuclear facility that provides nuclear power, and they're going to expand it. So you've got Russian technicians, Russian people on the property. If Israel or the United States launches any kind of attack on that facility and kills Russians, that's going to be an act of war as far as Russia is concerned. And I think that's one of the things that actually has forced Israel to not go forward as quickly because of Russia's relationship with Iran. And now that this agreement's signed, it's even, it's now, I think, one of the commitments is a dramatic increase in Russian cooperation with the Iranians and fortifying their air defense systems. So, attacking, again, these people that talk about attacking Iran, they're like children who play video games and think that the video games are real life, and that or they watched the Tom Cruise movie, Top Gun 2, and all they got to have is some low-level flying aircraft and can take out all the Iranians. It's silliness. Iran is, moving to it's trying to open negotiations with the United States. And, the reality is, I think you'll see Trump being open to it. One of the things that would be, a key negotiating position from the United States is to insist that Iran recognize Israel's right to exist, which I think, the conditions could be such that Iran would be willing to do that, provided that the Palestinians have a state. So that's the kind of big deal that I see Donald Trump trying to craft together. But this, while there's a risk that some of the crazies will prevail, I think further attacks on Israel, on Iran by Israel, are unlikely, because Israel doesn't have unlimited military power. It's already very stressed and strained. And to try to expand the fight, pick the fight, when, Iran can retaliate. And Iran has, bought some goodwill from the Russians as well, because, they were, you had our mutual friend, Mohammed Marandi on your podcast on several different occasions, and he was certain that Iran was going to retaliate. And knowing Professor Marandi, he's not a dishonest person, and he was expressing, I'm sure, his sincere belief in what he understood. But Iran didn't do it, so you have to step back and say, why? Well, the Israeli version, well, because they're so weakened, they're so afraid. No, I don't believe that at all. I believe that, behind the scenes, Russia and China were counseling, now hold off, sort of rise above this. And Russia's actually in a position where they can talk about that, because Russia too they've been attacked in ways that, under normal international relations theory, they should have retaliated with was act of war. The United States has committed a casus belli against Russia, fully justifying a war, but Russia recognizes the human cost that comes with that and is trying to limit it. So I think the advice that they gave Iran has been, the Iranians have wisely accepted it. And so this is, with Trump in the White House now, there may be a chance for a negotiated settlement. Trump got rid of the JCPOA, or however the acronym goes.
JCPOA, that's right. Yeah.
Yeah, because he didn't negotiate it. It wasn't his agreement. By God, if he gets an agreement, it'll be the greatest thing ever. That's how I'll describe it. But I think one of the in trying to reach that kind of agreement, he's also trying to resurrect the Abraham Accords. So Trump's, I think Trump recognizes the United States prestige has been severely damaged by Biden and his crew, and that the United States has very little credibility now with countries in the global South. And they're increasingly flocking into the camp of China and Russia. And how do you reverse that? Well, even though Trump has made some bombastic threats, the United States can't threaten its way to victory. It's going to have to, start treating some of these countries with respect. And, I think Trump understands that, but we'll see.
Here is what Putin said after signing the agreement. He said that Russia attaches great importance to the future strengthening of friendly relations with Iran. Relations between Russia and Iran are extensive and mutually beneficial. The Russian and Iranian authorities are united in their desire to bring bilateral relations to a new level. Larry, it seems that one of the one of the articles of this agreement is to support each other in terms of a war, a major war. And but still we don't know what would be, to what extent they would do that. Do you understand it?
Well, the Western narrative was that Iran was supplying drones to Russia because Russia couldn't produce them. Now, I don't subscribe to that, but it is true, though, that I think Iran did provide some drones that Russia was able to both test, prove in combat, and they've been a game changer as far as that whole war is concerned. By the same token, Iran has its own air defense system, but Russia's got a much more sophisticated system that and it's integrated, and so that's one of the things they're able to offer Iran. So this, the level of cooperation, I think from Russia's standpoint, they don't need the military backing of Iran. But, and that's the curious thing with both Iran and Russia. They're always presented as these imperial aggressive powers trying to go out and conquer other countries. But again, the only one that's doing that is the United States. It's not them. They're basically stay at home, mind their own business. Yes, Iran has been providing support to Hezbollah and to Hamas, financial support, absolutely, and weapons too. And frankly, I fully understand it. It's not part of some, subversive plot. It's that in some aspects you could label it as humanitarian, because they recognize that the Israelis are intent on destroying the Palestinians, and the Iranians are doing their best to try to save them.
Is Donald Trump receiving much more resistance to solve the conflict in Ukraine from the bloc, from the establishment, the deep state, or?
No, I don't think he cares. There's nothing that the deep state now can do. They can try to sabotage Trump, and they may very well. Does not change what's happening on the ground in Ukraine. The Ukrainians are losing. They're dying in larger numbers with each passing day. Russia is getting stronger with each passing day. These crazies in the West who insist that Russia's, suffering massive casualties and its economy is shattered in tatters. These are lies, but we keep telling ourselves lies. And, it doesn't, lying to yourself about reality doesn't change the reality. It may make you, most likely makes you more unprepared to deal with the consequences of that reality. So, I think what Trump and company are going to discover is that the Russians are in no hurry to end this war. They'll end it, but they're going to end it on terms that Russia will insist on. That means eliminating the NATO threat. NATO's got to back off, and no more joint military exercises with Ukraine, no more Western military aid to Ukraine. All that's got to stop. Put an end to that. Russia then will be on a basis for dealing with the West. Otherwise, they're going to destroy Ukraine. I think it's that simple.
I was wondering what's going on right now in the mind of Zelensky when he sees that even Netanyahu, with the sort of leverage he has in the United States, was forced into a ceasefire. And we know that. How does he feel, in your opinion, right now?
Well, I think frightened is probably an apt description. I have a cruder expression for it, but I'll I'll avoid the vulgarity. He is, I think it is increasingly coming to recognize that he does not have a friend in Donald Trump. That Trump is not going to ensure that he can continue his campaign of grift and greed. So, Trump will be able to stop the war very quickly if he just pulls the plug on Ukraine. Totally, it's okay. We're done. We're not. You're getting no more money. That's over. Once that happens, then and they're fully collapsing internally. Then he'll be able to talk to the Russians.
Does the Trump administration want a Europe more independent, the way that Elon Musk is supporting AfD, Alternative for Deutschland? Are they really in favor of the independence of Europe from the United States?
I don't think Trump cares about Europe. As far as he doesn't want Europe to be an economic burden on the United States. And I think Trump is, dead serious when he says, these Europeans need to step up and start paying for NATO. America's done being a sucker. Where we pay the bill, and then you guys get to play all day, and not pick up any of the expenses. No, that's going to stop. But Europe is coming apart at the seams. It is. It's not in the same position it was, say, even 3 years ago. The internal divisions within Germany, France, and England are significant. And what we've witnessed there is the decline of majority parties. Go back 30 years ago, the CDU, I believe, in Germany, for example, was the dominant party. I mean, it had a actual majority. Majority of the people say, yeah, we back this. Similarly, you saw that in England with the Conservatives, and then Labour, and then back to the Conservatives. Similarly in France. That's not the case now. And now neither Labour nor the Tories nor the Reform Party in Britain command majorities. They command pluralities. And for Germany, AfD is now, on par with CDU, but they each have like 30% support. It's same thing in France. Marine Le Pen's party, again, it has a plurality, but not a majority. So all that's doing is leading to political chaos among those big three. Then you've got Viktor Orban in Hungary, Fico in Slovakia. You're going to probably have Georgescu in Romania, Kickel in Austria, is it? So you've got strong voices opposing EU support for Ukraine and confrontation with Russia. They want to have good relations with Russia, not the opposite. And then once you pull back the curtains on all this political theater behind the scenes, Europe is now back heavily buying Russian gas and oil. And so, this Europe has basically sabotaged itself for the United States. Trump is not going to come in and he's going to insist that America be benefited. And that means, Europe will not be, or Europe takes a back seat. So I think one of the things we'll see under Donald Trump maybe is the end of NATO. NATO as we know it.
Are they going to let the Alternative for Deutschland, AfD, to reconnect the pipeline between Germany and Russia?
I'm sure Trump will oppose that. But both AfD and I think the Wagenknecht is as well the party she represents.
Yes.
They both pledged to try to get Nord Stream going back. Because they recognize Germany's getting killed by depending upon U.S. Supplies of natural gas. It has raised the costs. It has impoverished their industry. They're losing jobs. The economy is contracting. It continues to contract. None of this is good.
No. Thank you so much, Larry.
Eyes on the economy. After all, you could argue that is the number one reason that people elected President Trump this time. Bring down inflation, drive down interest rates, try to steady this economy. Inflation numbers are still through the roof. People are paying enormous prices for groceries across the country. The market seems to be in a bit of a spasm. We're seeing the market taking a big dump. Mortgage rates are on the rise. That's supposed to be going down now that the Fed has cut rates. Central banks buying up gold and silver like it's going out of style. What in the world is going on? Let's get a pulse of the economy right now. We'd like to check in with Kevin Demerit, the CEO of Lear Capital, for a finger who's got his finger on the pulse of all of this. What's going on out there? Kevin, great to see you. Welcome back to the show.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Clayton.
It's a really interesting time. I mean, I think like the market right now is kind of spinning in its heels, waiting for President Trump to get in there. What sort of regulations will be cut? What sort of free market forces will be unfurled for the first time in maybe 15 years? So where do you see things sitting right now? I mean, obviously you're knee deep, of course, in what people dealing with in gold and silver. On the investing side, where are you seeing things moving in the next couple of days, in the next week or so?
Well, most of the people we're talking to, kind of pointing at four specific things. One is just the geopolitical tensions. What's going to happen there, right? We've got conflicts in Eastern Europe. You've got Asia with China and Taiwan, not so much recently, and then you have this Israel situation. So what's going to take place there? You have, like you brought up, record central banks selling of dollars and then moving over and purchasing precious metals. So they're reducing their reliance on the U.S. dollar. They're nervous about the debt levels, and they're really nervous about what I think is a big tipping point with $1 trillion of interest payments from the U.S. government, which, if you add up, is higher than any other expense than we have. So for the first time in history, it's larger than defense, transportation, everything else. Your interest on the debt is at a very high level. So I think a lot of these central banks are extremely nervous about the value of the dollar long term and selling off and moving over. They're also selling off, in my opinion, because of the possible tariffs and a trade war that could happen because of those tariffs. It could affect supply chains, increase inflation. So a lot of concern around that. And then lastly, just record debt levels on the government side that I don't know if they can really get under control, but also on the consumer side. We're seeing credit card debt at credit card default rates at 16-year highs. And people are not just using their credit cards to buy luxuries, they're using them to pay for groceries and gas. That's a problem. That's what we saw back prior to 2008. And here we go again. So, debt is a big problem. And again, I think it's a big tipping point with the US government having its largest expense being interest, because that's something you just can't cut.
Yeah, I don't know how they're going to I'll ask you how they'll put that genie back in the bottle if they can. We've had former Congressman Ron Paul, former presidential candidate Ron Paul, who I'm a huge fan of. He really thinks there's really no way out of this. I mean, with this massive amount of interest that we're paying, and of course he's not a big fan of tariffs either. So I'm curious where you see, once we get into this tariff war with Canada, Mexico, and Europe, et cetera, Where do you think things are going to shake out for the United States consumer and just the everyday American?
Well, first of all, you look at these tariffs and are they the right thing to do? Probably. We've had a lot of free access from different countries to us, but no politicians kind of had the nuts to get out there and say, okay, I'm going to place tariffs back on your goods and services. Trump's going to do that. What are the ramifications of that? Probably, if I had to guess, some supply chain issues, because you're going to have some trade wars. There's not going to be enough of certain things like maybe chips and so on and so forth that everybody's been talking about. So prices are going to go up. You are going to get higher inflation. Not good for the national debt, because again, our interest rate on that is too high. It's probably not great for anybody with a credit card debt, because your interest rates are going to be high. So I think you're going to get this higher for longer interest rates, higher for longer inflation because of these tariffs. And then what happens to the dollar and really the value of the stock market and your retirement and everything that goes along with it? People have to pay attention at this particular time. Like I said, this $1 trillion in interest payments is a big tipping point, because there's nothing you can do. But you can cut defense spending, but you can't cut the interest. That's a problem.
Yeah, I mean, it's unbelievable how much interest we're paying on this right now. And, I really feel bad for, it's not just about gas prices, which have gone down in a lot of areas right now. It is just the cost of goods. It's just the cost of being able to buy eggs and milk and groceries that have gone up over 20% for so many Americans in just about every category. I know it's asking you a lot to look into a crystal ball to see how tariffs maybe will drive down the cost of those goods. Do you think that we're going to see any immediate relief for average Americans in their wallet?
No. If you are going to place tariffs on products coming into the United States, you are going to have higher prices. I can't find any time in history where you place tariffs on countries and the price of anything went down. That isn't the way that it happens. If I put a tax on something, the price is going to go up. So again, is it the right thing to do? Yes. 2 years from now, maybe everybody gets together, or a year from now, maybe the countries get together and say, hey, look, I'm placing tariffs on you, you're placing tariffs on me. Let's get rid of the tariffs. Let's have an equal playing field. That would be where I believe Trump, hopefully, is where his thought is, and it's the right thing to do. I really believe that. In the immediate term, over the next 12 to 15 months, higher prices, 100%.
So really kind of like a leverage move here, because Europe, we talk about a massive hundreds of billions of dollars trade debt to Europe, where they have a trade surplus to the United States. I mean, upwards of $50 billion trade surplus. So yeah, they're shipping their goods to us. They're not accepting our goods. They're not putting stuff on their store shelves in Europe. And I said, this weekend I did a video where I highlighted just the lack of goods. You want to go into a store in Europe, try to find American products, you're not going to find it. You're just not going to find it. So there's a massive imbalance here. But I think, yeah, you're right about that. I think American consumers are probably going to feel the squeeze in the meantime until things get balanced out here. Let's talk about real estate a little bit. You're obviously a huge real estate fan, as am I. And I always talk about investing in tangible assets like gold and silver and real estate. Well, you're seeing mortgage rates going up. I thought we would have seen mortgage rates coming down because the Fed cut rates. The federal funds rate has dropped. Why are mortgage rates going up? How long do you think that's going to happen?
Well, when you have $1 trillion interest payment from the government, the market is going to dictate where those interest rates go, not the federal government. The federal government can lower interest rates now back to 2%, and I believe you're going to still have 5 or 6%, 7%, mortgage rates. And if the tariffs take place and you can't get the deficit under control, then interest rates are going to go higher and higher and higher, because they're based on the 10-year or 20-year, government bond and whatever the spread is on that. So you're not going to get that interest down. That's why I'm saying this $1 trillion is really a tipping point. As soon as the interest is your biggest expense in the government, there's no backing away. Everybody that's listening has to start thinking about their retirement and interest and inflation higher for longer, right? Maybe they didn't believe it in the beginning, but everything that Trump is doing will drive interest rates probably higher for longer and inflation higher for longer. Now, when I say what he's doing, don't take it as a negative. I think the tariffs turn out to be, in 12 to 15 months, a good thing. And these imbalances that you were talking about will start to work their way out. He's going to try to lower the government spending by $2 trillion. Look, the government spends around $8 trillion now. You lower it by $2 trillion. Where do you lower it? Defense spending? Social programs?
Right.
They're all tough choices. Is it the right thing to do? Yes, but are they tough choices? And is something going to happen on the other side? Sure, there's businesses that have contracts with the government that are going to lose those contracts. That's going to affect, the economy. 1/3 of government spending, 1/3 of the economy is based on government spending. You lower that by $2 trillion. That's 10% of the entire economy. You are going to have some pain. It's like you and I, if we had huge amounts of credit card debt and our interest was higher than anything else that we had, right? It was higher than our mortgage payment and so on and so forth. We need to do something, and we need to stop buying cars and stop buying clothes and maybe stop going out to eat. That pain for a year or two will come back, and you lowered all of your expenses, and you're back in a place that you should be. That pain that we're going to go through in the economy is the right thing to do. It's just how much of it do you want to take, and how long will it last? And people better get prepared. So you bring up real estate. Everything tangible right now is what I would be purchasing. Look, I can't build any more real estate, and we can't print gold. So if inflation is going to run a little bit higher for longer, the interest rate is going, or the interest on the government debt is going to be $1 trillion, and they're going to be printing up trillions of dollars to try to cover that. The value of the dollar is going down, and the price of real estate and tangibles like gold and silver are going to go much higher.
So gold and silver, last time you were here on the show talking about silver, we see this silver shortage right now. And of course, what Trump wants to do with the massive expansion here for, data centers and energy production and everything, all of it requires silver. And we have a silver shortage. Are you still as bullish on silver as you were?
Absolutely. I think it's one of the most undervalued assets out there. You have a supply deficit in silver larger than we've ever seen in the past 20 years. It's trading at a 40% discount to its all-time high of $49. And like you said, we're going to build more data centers. The green energy with solar is not slowing down. Silver's used in batteries for electric vehicles. So you've got all of these new uses for silver, yet you're running at a deficit, and there's no solution to fill that deficit. So in my opinion, the silver price should be in the $35, $37 range, and we're at $29 today. Very undervalued.
Yeah, Natalie and I, of course, huge. We just bought a lot of gold and a lot of silver, and we usually split it up about, last time we purchased silver, we did about 70% silver, 30% gold. So, that's kind of the balance of what we're looking at right now, because it's relatively inexpensive, comparatively speaking. If people want to reach out to you guys do an amazing job over at Lear Capital. If anyone wants to speak with you guys about purchasing a little bit of silver, a little bit of gold as a tangible asset right now, we have the phone number here on the screen. You guys have been great for our viewers. 1-800-613-3557, or they can just go to learredacted.com and talk to you guys. Any final thoughts here? I mean, this is a big week. Got a few days till Trump takes office. What do you think we're going to see sort of maybe in the first few weeks of the Trump presidency? What do you expect to see from your clients? You have people calling you. What are they most concerned about right now?
Well, they're most concerned about really a lot of the things we were talking about: the interest rate, the debt on the government side, the debt on consumer side, because it has such an effect on the stock market and their retirement. And then what's going to happen with these tariffs, and what does that really mean to inflation and interest rates? And really what we did, look, we don't have enough time. We could spend 4 hours talking about all of this stuff. So we put a big special report together for 2025, talking about debt, talking about interest rates, inflation, and the tariffs. Our best guess on 3 scenarios on tariffs, and we'll just give that away for free. I think that's the place people should start, is just try to educate themselves and see maybe a different perspective. And then if you believe in that perspective, you can move forward and purchase some gold and silver. But I think getting everybody educated, in our opinion, is the first great place to start. You do a great job on your program, and we'll try to expand on that a little bit with our special report.
Well, I was talking to a buddy the other day where there's no financial literacy in the United States. Schools don't teach it. They barely even teach you to like balance a checkbook. So they really do not want you educated on finances. They don't want you to understand that buying real estate, buying tangible assets is a way to protect yourself, a hedge against inflation. They hope that you go out there and go into consumer debt, get credit cards. They really prey on people right now. So yeah, educate yourself. Kevin, great to see you. Stay safe. I know you're in Los Angeles there. How are you dealing with all the
As the world anticipates President-elect Donald Trump's inauguration next week, concerns are mounting over his proposed tariff policies and their potential impact on global trade. Trump has signaled intentions to impose substantial tariffs, including up to 60% on Chinese imports and 10 to 20% on goods from other nations, aiming to reduce the U.S. trade deficit and encourage domestic production. European leaders, including French President Emmanuel Macron, have expressed apprehension about the potential for a trade war with the U.S. Macron warned that the U.S. might continue to protect its interests at the risk of dismantling value chains between Europeans and Americans. In response, the EU is considering adopting a more assertive trade policy, exemplified by recent tariffs on Chinese electric vehicles. Japanese companies with operations in the U.S. are preparing for possible additional tariffs under the incoming Trump administration. Measures include strengthening manufacturing and procurement within the U.S. and contemplating price increases for products. A survey indicated that a majority of these companies anticipate negative effects from the proposed tariffs. Despite previous tariffs, China's dominance in global manufacturing has continued to rise, posting a near $1 trillion trade surplus in 2024. However, the prospect of new U.S. tariffs threatens to escalate tensions and disrupt existing trade dynamics. China has been actively seeking to reduce its reliance on the U.S. dollar in international trade, a process known as de-dollarization. The Russia-Iran treaty stands in contrast to the broader global trend of nations bracing for potential U.S. tariffs. While countries like those in the EU and Japan are strategizing to mitigate the impact of anticipated U.S. trade policies, Russia and Iran are proactively strengthening bilateral ties and reducing dependence on the U.S. dollar. This move aligns with broader efforts among BRICS nations to explore alternatives to the dollar in international trade. President-elect Trump's warnings to impose 100% tariffs on countries that move away from the U.S. dollar add another layer of complexity to the evolving geopolitical landscape. The Russia-Iran partnership may test the incoming administration's approach to international alliances and economic policies. As these dynamics unfold, the global community remains watchful, preparing to adapt to the shifting paradigms of trade and diplomatic relations. Amid these developments, Russian President Vladimir Putin and Iranian President Masoud Pezeshkian signed a comprehensive 20-year strategic partnership treaty in Moscow on January 17, 2025. This agreement aims to deepen cooperation in areas such as defense, energy, and trade. Notably, the treaty includes plans to facilitate trade using their national currencies, effectively moving towards de-dollarization between the two nations. Before diving into the details of the treaty, let's first examine the collective approach taken by BRICS countries to counter the dominance of the U.S. dollar. The BRICS nations have been at the forefront of efforts to reduce their reliance on the U.S. dollar in international trade and finance. This move toward de-dollarization stems from a shared desire to counterbalance the dominance of the dollar in global markets, which has historically given the United States significant leverage over other nations. The BRICS nations are also motivated by a collective ambition to create a more equitable global financial order, free from the geopolitical pressures exerted by the current dollar-centric system. Recent geopolitical developments, such as sanctions against Russia and China's growing economic rivalry with the U.S., have further accelerated these efforts. One of the most notable steps toward de-dollarization by BRICS was the creation of the New Development Bank, or NDB, in 2014. The NDB was established with the explicit goal of providing financial resources for infrastructure and sustainable development projects in member states and other emerging economies. Unlike traditional institutions like the International Monetary Fund or the World Bank, the NDB emphasizes local currency financing. This approach reduces dependence on the dollar and shields member economies from exchange rate fluctuations. With an annual authorized lending capacity of $34 billion, the NDB has supported numerous projects while promoting financial independence. For example, infrastructure projects in Brazil and renewable energy initiatives in India have been partially funded through non-dollar mechanisms. Such efforts underscore the role of the NDB as a critical pillar in BRICS' strategy to reshape global financial norms. The shift away from dollar-denominated transactions is one of the clearest manifestations of the de-dollarization agenda. According to data from the Bank for International Settlements, the share of cross-border lending by BRICS residents denominated in US dollars declined from 67% in 2016 to 55% by early 2024. This trend reflects a deliberate effort by member nations to diversify their financial instruments and trade settlements. Moreover, the issuance of international debt securities by BRICS countries in dollars has similarly decreased, from 83% to 75% over the same period. This gradual decline highlights the bloc's commitment to reducing its exposure to dollar-related risks, particularly those stemming from U.S. monetary policy and sanctions. Bilateral trade using local currencies. BRICS nations have actively pursued bilateral agreements to conduct trade in their respective local currencies, further diminishing the need for the U.S. dollar. For instance, in March 2023, China and Brazil agreed to settle all trade transactions using their national currencies, the Chinese yuan and the Brazilian real. This move was aimed at fostering financial stability and deepening economic ties between the two countries, China and Russia. In November 2010, China and Russia agreed to utilize their national currencies, the yuan and the ruble, for bilateral trade, moving away from the US dollar. This initiative was designed to strengthen economic ties and protect their economies during the financial crisis of 2007 to 2008. By December 2023, over 90% of trade between China and Russia was conducted in their respective currencies, reflecting a significant shift towards de-dollarization. India and Russia. To circumvent Western sanctions, India and Russia have trialed using the Indian rupee for trade. Following Russia's increased oil exports to India since the Ukraine conflict, approximately 90% of their bilateral trade is now settled in rupees and rubles. This arrangement has led to Russia accumulating substantial rupee reserves, which are being invested in Indian assets. China and Ethiopia. China has promoted the use of its currency through bilateral currency swap agreements, as seen in its trade with Ethiopia. This approach includes barter trade models that bypass traditional currencies by exchanging goods for local currencies, thereby reducing reliance on the US dollar. Exploration of a unified BRICS currency. Beyond bilateral efforts, the BRICS bloc has explored the possibility of creating a unified currency to facilitate intra-bloc trade and investment. While this proposal remains in its infancy, it has sparked significant debate and interest. A unified currency could serve as a direct alternative to the US dollar, symbolizing the bloc's collective economic strength. However, this initiative faces practical challenges, including disparities in the economic size and stability of member nations, and the complexities of creating a central monetary authority for the bloc. BRICS Pay, a unified payment system. BRICS Pay is a proposed blockchain-based payment system designed to facilitate seamless cross-border transactions among BRICS countries. Its primary objective is to bypass traditional financial infrastructures dominated by the US dollar and Western institutions, thereby promoting financial independence within the bloc. By leveraging blockchain technology, BRICS Pay aims to provide a secure, transparent, and efficient platform for member nations to conduct trade and investment activities. The development of BRICS Pay signifies a strategic move towards de-dollarization, enabling member countries to conduct transactions in their local currencies. This system is expected to reduce transaction costs, mitigate exchange rate risks, and enhance economic cooperation among BRICS nations. Additionally, by creating an alternative to the SWIFT system, BRICS Pay seeks to insulate member countries from potential sanctions and financial pressures exerted through Western-controlled financial networks. Let's take a quick moment. If you're enjoying the video so far, we'd really appreciate it if you could hit the like button. Want to be even more helpful? Leave us a comment. It helps us reach a wider audience and improves our content. Thank you for your support. Now let's dive back into the discussion. Cryptocurrency-based trade initiatives. In addition to BRICS Pay, member nations are exploring the adoption of cryptocurrencies and blockchain technology to further their de-dollarization efforts. During the 2024 BRICS Summit in Kazan, Russia, leaders discussed the potential of central bank digital currencies, or CBDCs, and blockchain-based platforms to facilitate trade and reduce dependence on the US dollar. Russian, Chinese, and Iranian leaders advocated for the development of new financial systems utilizing digital currencies to create a more resilient and independent economic framework. The integration of cryptocurrencies into BRICS's financial strategies represents a significant shift towards embracing digital finance. By adopting blockchain technology and digital currencies, BRICS nations aim to enhance transparency, security, and efficiency in trade transactions. These initiatives also reflect a broader trend of leveraging technological advancements to establish a multipolar global financial order less susceptible to unilateral economic policies. What is Russia-Iran Treaty? On January 17, 2025, Russian President Vladimir Putin and Iranian President Masoud Pezeshkian signed a comprehensive strategic partnership treaty in Moscow, marking a significant enhancement of bilateral relations between the two nations. Key provisions of the treaty: security and defense cooperation. The treaty outlines plans for joint military exercises and the sharing of intelligence to counter mutual threats. Both nations commit to resolving disputes in line with the UN Charter and international law, and to prevent their territories from being used to support separatist movements against each other. Energy collaboration. Russia and Iran will promote cooperation between their energy companies and encourage investments in projects for developing oil and gas fields. Additionally, both parties will work on long-term joint projects on the peaceful use of nuclear energy, including the construction of nuclear power stations. Trade and economic relations. The agreement includes the creation of a modern payment system independent of third countries, promoting the use of national currencies and financial products. This aims to facilitate smoother trade and economic transactions between the two nations. This 20-year treaty signifies a deepening alliance between Russia and Iran, especially in the context of shared experiences under Western sanctions. Both countries have faced restrictions on their vital energy industries and have sought to strengthen their partnership to mitigate these challenges. The signing of this treaty also comes at a time of shifting geopolitical dynamics, with both nations seeking to bolster their positions on the global stage. The enhanced cooperation is expected to have significant implications for regional security and international relations. Iran-Russia relationship over the years. The trade relationship between Russia and Iran has evolved significantly over the centuries, marked by periods of both cooperation and conflict. The relationship between Russia and Iran has its roots in the 16th century during the Safavid era, when formal diplomatic ties were established. Over the centuries, their interactions were marked by territorial conflicts, alliances, and complex geopolitical maneuvering. The 19th century saw significant tension as the Russian Empire expanded southward, leading to wars and the imposition of treaties like the Treaty of Gulistan in 1813 and the Treaty of Turkmenchay in 1828, which heavily favored Russia. However, the geopolitical landscape shifted dramatically in the 20th century, particularly after the 1979 Iranian Revolution. While the Soviet Union initially viewed the revolution with caution, both nations recognized shared interests in countering U.S. influence in the region. The dissolution of the Soviet Union in 1991 opened new opportunities for economic and strategic collaboration, setting the stage for a gradual improvement in relations. Trade dynamics in the post-Soviet era. In the 1990s, trade between Russia and Iran remained modest, influenced by economic challenges within both countries. Russia was grappling with the transition from a planned economy to a market-based one, while Iran faced international isolation due to its nuclear program and alleged support for terrorism. Despite these obstacles, the two nations identified common interests, particularly in the energy sector.
The early 2000s marked a turning point as bilateral trade began to grow. Russia became a key supplier of military equipment to Iran, including advanced missile systems like the S-300. Simultaneously, both countries collaborated in developing Iran's energy infrastructure, such as the construction of the Bushehr nuclear power plant, a project initiated in the 1990s and completed with Russian assistance in 2011. By the mid-2000s, trade volumes reached approximately $1.6 billion annually, driven by energy, military cooperation, and industrial equipment. While these figures were relatively modest compared to Iran's trade with China or the European Union, they reflected a deepening partnership. Impact of sanctions and fluctuating trade. The imposition of international sanctions on Iran between 2010 and 2015, primarily due to its nuclear program, led to a sharp decline in trade with Russia, falling by 65%. Russia faced pressure from Western nations to limit its engagement with Iran, resulting in a cautious approach during this period. However, the signing of the Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action, or JCPOA, in 2015, which lifted certain sanctions, provided a significant boost to Iran's economy and its trade relationships. By 2017, bilateral trade between Russia and Iran rebounded, reaching $1.7 billion. Key exports included Russian machinery, agricultural products, and metals, while Iran exported agricultural goods and petrochemicals. The reimposition of U.S. sanctions on Iran in 2018 under the Trump administration once again disrupted trade. However, Russia and Iran increasingly sought ways to bypass sanctions, including barter trade and transactions in local currencies. These efforts laid the groundwork for a more resilient partnership in the face of external pressures. Economic initiatives and infrastructure projects. The International North-South Transport Corridor, or NSDC, has emerged as a cornerstone of the Russia-Iran trade relationship. This multimodal transport network, involving rail, road, and sea routes, aims to reduce transit times and costs for goods traveling between Russia, Iran, and India. The corridor is expected to increase trade volumes significantly, with potential annual savings of 30 to 40% in shipping costs. In addition to the NSDC, Russia has invested in upgrading Iranian ports and logistics facilities to enhance trade efficiency. The Rasht-Astara Railway, in particular, has received significant attention, with Russia committing substantial resources to expedite its completion. This project aligns with Moscow's broader strategy to diversify its trade routes and reduce dependence on European markets. Conclusion. The relationship between BRICS nations and the United States remains highly uncertain, particularly in light of heightened tensions following Donald Trump's re-election. While his administration's stance on BRICS as a bloc is unclear, his approach to individual member nations introduces complexity. Trump has signaled a potential interest in engaging with Russia differently than other Western countries, particularly given the continued fallout from the Russia-Ukraine conflict. This contrasts with the more adversarial policies traditionally adopted by the US and its allies. However, the situation with Iran is expected to remain tense, as previous administrations, including Trump's first term, have adopted a hardline stance toward the country. Iran's closer ties with Russia and other BRICS members, particularly through initiatives aimed at de-dollarization, could further strain its relationship with the US ultimately. Predicting the trajectory of US-BRICS relations under Trump is challenging, given the multifaceted dynamics at play. His inauguration next week will likely offer critical insights into his administration's policies and priorities, particularly regarding trade, sanctions, and geopolitical alliances. For now, the future of BRICS-US relations remains murky, and only time will reveal how this evolving relationship unfolds in the months ahead. That's all for today's video. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel and click the notification bell so you'll be notified whenever we upload new content.
Dear Mr. President, dear friends, allow me to warmly welcome you all to Moscow. Is the translation in progress? This year, we celebrate the 65th anniversary of the establishment of diplomatic relations between our countries. And at the beginning of our meeting, I would like to thank you for the attention that you personally pay to the development of our interstate ties. You took part in both Russia-Africa summits in 2019 and in 2023. I proceed from the fact that all the events that we have planned together with our African colleagues in this area, in the area of Russia's interaction with the African continent as a whole, will be developed and supported. I am also grateful to you for taking part in the first forum of supporters of the fight against modern practices of neocolonialism. You came to Moscow. And I know that you have a very busy program now. In fact, it has begun. The work is already underway. The regulatory framework for our interaction is being strengthened. Several documents have already been signed between various ministries and departments. But during your visit, we also plan to sign several that will create a good, significant legal basis for our cooperation. As for trade and economic relations, the absolute figures are still small, but I would like to note a very good trend. Our trade turnover has increased almost eightfold over the past year. This is, in general, a good indicator. We are ready, if necessary, to continue providing humanitarian aid. You know that we do this. This mainly concerns food supplies, primarily wheat. We are ready to continue to cooperate in this direction. I would like to note our cooperation in the field of security. We intend to act in this direction in the same way as we have acted so far. We will discuss these prospects with you both in a broad format and later during our face-to-face meeting. And of course, we attach great importance to our cooperation in the international arena, including at the United Nations. Dear Mr. President, we are very glad to see you. Welcome to Moscow. Mr. President, dear friends, I thank you for your friendly invitation, which gives us an excellent opportunity to confirm the fruitful cooperation between the Russian Federation, your wonderful and great people, with the people of the Central African Republic. I would like to thank you and also thank the government and the people of the Russian Federation for the warm welcome that was extended to my delegation and to me personally. And thank you for giving us the opportunity to make this visit. I would also like to thank your ambassador, his team, and the Russian instructors who help us every day to strengthen the bilateral cooperation between our countries. The fruits that this cooperation brings are very important for our people. I would also like to thank you for meeting today, despite your very busy schedule. It is a great honor for us to make this visit. This official visit is new evidence of the sincere cooperation, sincere friendly attitude and sustainability of our pragmatic cooperation, which has become an example for the whole of Africa, and which is a source of inspiration for many African countries, as well as for the whole world. I would like to take this opportunity to convey from our government, from our people to your government and your people, wishes for prosperity, peace, and good luck in all your endeavors. Mr. President, dear friends, esteemed members of the government of the Russian Federation, I would like to take the opportunity of this official visit and reaffirm my gratitude and the gratitude of the people of the Central African Republic for your assistance, which made it possible to avoid a new civil war in the Central African Republic in 2020 to 2021. I want to thank you from the bottom of my heart for the grain supplies, for the fuel that you delivered to Bongi. The Russian Federation supported the lifting of the embargo on weapons, as well as the lifting of the embargo that was imposed on the export of diamonds, which allowed the Central African Republic to fully enjoy its sovereignty. Also, on behalf of our people, I would like to express my sincere gratitude to you, Mr. President, and to the Russian Federation for your strong support, which has not only allowed us to restore stability to our country, but has also allowed us to take a strong place among sovereign states. During this visit, I would like to discuss with you the issues that we consider a priority and that we are all thinking about, namely, cooperation in the field of security, in the field of economic cooperation, development of economic cooperation, agriculture, mines, geology, energy, and livestock. In terms of security, we have made significant progress in restoring peace and stability throughout our territory. Today, our army, trained by Russian instructors, is capable of repelling terrorists and all others who encroach on the territory of the Central African Republic.
That's right.
We will continue to work together to strengthen security throughout the country, on the borders, wherever the threat comes from. Russian instructors are truly professionals. In order to activate the results of this cooperation, we will also note several progresses. We have intensified the training of our military personnel. You have also supplied military equipment. In terms of the economy, we are ready to promote significant cooperation in the fields of agriculture, energy, mines, and geology. In terms of agriculture, the Central African Republic has great potential. We have a large territory. We have more than 15 million hectares of territory. We are ready to improve this sector, but nevertheless, we lack specialists and the necessary equipment. We would like investors from the Russian Federation to invest more in projects related to agriculture, livestock farming, which will contribute to the diversification of cotton and peanut imports to Russia. We believe that the Russian Federation can supply us with machinery and equipment, as well as technology, so that we can contribute to the improvement of agriculture, that we can extract cotton and sugar. In terms of special equipment that is necessary to improve our agriculture, we are also interested in this. In terms of mines and geology, the Central African Republic has a huge amount of natural resources that are still in our depths. The Ministers of Agriculture signed a special protocol to give new momentum to our relations.
in this fog was Horatio Marcel. We are going to be looking at some disturbing videos, strange and odd news stories, and as always, let's go ahead and get right into today's video. As the title and the thumbnail of this video states, we actually do have an update to this mysterious fog that people kept seeing. Not only were they seeing this fog, but they were smelling it and tasting it as well, saying that it smelled and tasted like chemicals. There were also people saying how the fog was making them sick. When they went out into the fog, they were experiencing respiratory problems. And if you remember, about a few weeks ago, I made a video saying how I went out into the fog and I developed this mysterious rash. And I realized it was not going away and actually getting bigger. And that is when tears, snot, and bubble guts were everywhere. Just a crazy, crazy time for my household. But it wasn't just me. Many people on social media were making videos saying what they were experiencing with this fog. And many more people were asking, well, why doesn't somebody just gather a sample of the fog and test it? So somebody did just that. This individual on Twitter, who goes by BR21, he also says that he's just a guy in Florida with a lab, specializes in infection control and medical tech. So he made a post saying that on January 1st, 2025, he will be collecting a sterile fog condensation specimen from Southwest Florida and will be processing it against all known infectious diseases, bacteria, and fungi associated with human and animal illness in his advanced CLIA molecular medical laboratory. On January 5th, he published the results. He put everything in a PDF and uploaded this PDF to Dropbox. Inside this PDF, he goes on to explain the methods he used, how the equipment was sterilized, and also the glass jar he used to collect the fog. You can also see photos of what he had collected, but let's scroll all the way down to the results. And as you can see, like he said, he tested multiple bacteria, infectious diseases, and fungi. Now, everything that he tested came back negative except one. He did get one positive result. What tested positive in this fog was Serratia marcescens bacteria, and he collected this fog in Naples, Florida, and he goes on to say that there are far too many variables to consider at this early stage, including whether or not this pathogen was specific to a small selected area in Naples, Florida, or if his personal property, or if this bacterium regularly and harmlessly occurs in fog, rain, and nature in general. He also goes on to say that he feels strongly that these results create no definite conclusions and additional testing is mandatory prior to any assumptions. A basic and common sense scientific approach should be followed if we want to uncover more. The American people deserve to know the truth, but it must be done correctly with real data and not speculation. He does not want people just to rely on his data. He wants other people as well to collect whatever fog samples they can, politicians and so forth, and test this fog in other locations to see if it matches his findings. So here's the thing. People believe that the fog has gone away, but that could be farthest from the truth. There are people in multiple locations, like here within the United States, people in the United Kingdom and so forth are still recording this fog and saying that the fog is making them sick. It's just that there are bigger news stories now taking over, and it seems like there is something new that happens every day that takes over from the previous news story. For example, you no longer really hear about the drones anymore. You no longer hear about Luigi Mangione because everybody's talking about the fires in Los Angeles, the TikTok ban, and so forth. So again, there are stories that do still exist. They just get drowned out by newer and bigger stories. I myself, I am late to talking about these results. These results, again, were published on January 5th, and I'm talking about them 10 days later. There are YouTube channels that were talking about the results as soon as they were published, but it seems like these YouTube channels were heavily suppressed. Now look, BR21 says we should not speculate about his findings until more results come through from other locations, and that's fine. I just can't help but to speculate, and I find it very interesting he found Serratia marcescens within his results because days before these results came out, multiple news and media agencies, they were publishing articles how this mysterious fog may connect to Serratia marcescens. I even made a video about 2 weeks ago saying how I found it very odd all these news media agencies were running multiple articles connecting this mysterious fog to Serratia marcescens in the 1950s as if they're trying to give us some kind of truth in plain sight. This is what I said almost 2 weeks ago. But here's the thing, and here's what I find very strange. I have been all over social media, TikTok, YouTube. I have even been using other people's videos as examples, giving them shout outs talking about this very strange fog. But not once have I come across a channel talking about this 1950s experiment. So this sounds like some kind of truth in plain sight. Maybe there were people on social media talking about Operation Sea Spray and this fog connecting the dots. I was doing a lot of research, looking at other people's videos, seeing what they were saying about the fog, what they were experiencing. And nobody, again, that I saw anyway, was talking about Operation Sea Spray. So it's rather interesting that news and media are trying to make that connection now. But going back to the article, it says, this is what I said almost 2 weeks ago. What's also interesting is that out of all the fog videos that I made, that was the only fog video to get limited by YouTube, meaning they were not going to allow any ads on that video and also reduce the video's visibility, making sure many people did not see that video, and they did not. Now, I did fight the limit and won, but the video only got 76,000 views. It does sound like a lot, but compare that to the other fog videos, 200,000 views, 400,000 views, so that video was suppressed. But like I said, days before these results came in, there were multiple news agencies running multiple articles about this fog. For example, on January 4th, the New York Post published this article, Americans alarmed by chemical fog spreading across the United States, phenomenon sparks bioweapon conspiracy theories after drone sightings. Now, there were people saying how the drones were spraying something, but I never ran across a video of anybody saying that the drones were spraying specifically Serratia marcescens. But the articles were talking about how these fog occurrences have eerie echoes of Operation Sea Spray, a secret biological warfare experiment conducted by the US Navy back in the 1950s. And back in the 1950s, they were spraying fog over multiple locations, and this fog did indeed have Serratia marcescens. The Daily Mail on January 3rd, mysterious fog sweeping United States sparks bioweapon fears as it echoes secret 1950 military program. And again, inside this article, they talk about how back in the 1950s, the United States Navy sprayed massive amounts of Serratia marcescens into the air 2 miles off the coast of San Francisco. And back then, people were reporting seeing a mysterious fog. Now, it's always plausible that BR-21 may just have a high concentration of Serratia marcescens in his location. This is where Serratia marcescens may thrive. But what are the odds that we have news and media talking about Serratia marcescens and this mysterious fog only days before these results were published? Is that just another coincidence, a quote-unquote coincidence in a plethora of coincidences between 2024 and 2025? We're just going to add that to the coincidence pile. Here's a couple of things you will find interesting about Serratia marcescens. When people first noticed this mysterious fog, they were saying that they smelled and tasted chemicals. Serratia marcescens does carry a chemical odor. This article here says the pathogenic bacterium Serratia marcescens has a chemical smell that includes volatile organic compounds, and these are the compounds that it releases. You can also read this up on the National Institutes of Health.gov. This is the article right here. Can Serratia marcescens cause a rash? Yes, Serratia marcescens can cause a rash, mainly in individuals with weakened immune systems. Now, I do often go to my PCP. I don't have a weakened immune system, but I still got this rash. You can read this article here by the National Institutes of Health.gov. And again, people were reporting that being out in the fog made them sick, as if they had an upper respiratory infection. Reading this here, it says, yes, Serratia marcescens can cause an upper respiratory infection, including pneumonia and rhinitis, and it goes to list the symptoms here. You can also read this article here from the National Library of Medicine, Serratia marcescens infection in a healthy adult, and it goes on to say how this adult had these symptoms, including an upper respiratory infection. So what are we looking at here? People were reporting smelling and tasting chemicals, becoming sick after going out in this fog, having the same symptoms that's found in Serratia marcescens. We have news and media linking Serratia marcescens to the mysterious fog only days before the results come out that this mysterious fog may have Serratia marcescens. And I only say may because he does not want us to speculate about his findings until more results come in, but the dots are really starting to connect. And the question happens to be, is this what was coming out of those drones? Because in a lot of these locations where the mysterious fog was appearing, there were heavy drone sightings. Now, like I said, people are still reporting on this mysterious fog. Over in Ireland, where they do get fog, people are saying that this fog is different. And after breathing it in, they're getting a sore throat. This is what this individual over in Ireland captured on video.
Okay, so it's really, really foggy. We know these chemical fogs, right? Have a look at this in front of my headlight. Just normal fog, look at this. It feels dry. It doesn't feel damp. I don't think we want to be out here breathing this air.
Now, is it just me? Or is it a bit of a coincidence? But since we had all that fog the other week for like 3-4 days or so, it just didn't clear. It was just constantly foggy for days. I mean, everyone's got ill. Everyone's poorly. Everyone's either got a cold or an ear infection or a cough or something along them lines. Just everybody's ill. Just me? Or I was thinking it too.
This was posted only 2 days ago by Matus J Marina 44 on TikTok.
The fog vid 25 isn't showing any signs of dissipating. Look at the air. Look at all them little particles. That's not moisture. That's something else. This isn't natural, people. This isn't normal. And we're not the only country that's being affected. I've seen videos of Africa. I've seen videos of Ireland. Dublin's really bad at the moment. County Leitrim's really bad. Everyone's experiencing this fog. It just doesn't seem normal. It doesn't seem natural. There's so many more people sick than usual. Healthy people who don't normally get sick are experiencing itchy throats, sinus problems, earache, can't sleep, lost their appetite, no energy. It's really strange what's going on, people. So share this video. Let's get the word out. Let's get people posting about it. Do you feel like this fog is doing something to us, which is making us have some sort of like symptoms? Is it something to do with the fog?
This was uploaded by Old Smokey on TikTok just only a day ago, where he talks about seeing the fog and also tasting and smelling something strange.
Okay, so I'm not really good at this short form TikTok content, but I had to film this and say something. I worked outside in the weather just like this for about 10 years. And it is about 7 degrees right now, maybe 6. I have never seen it foggy like this. It has been this way, I don't know, for the past 6 hours, 5-6 hours. This is odd. Maybe I'm reading into it too much. I don't know. There is a weird smell out here too. I guess I get a big old lungful of it there. We've had a lot of snow, as you guys can see, but this is bizarre to me. I don't know. Like I said, I worked on the river, so I'm used to seeing fog. I'm very used to fog, actually. Usually we would get fog on the river when nobody else would because of the condensation rising up off the river, the humidity, just depending on the weather. But you guys tell me, is this weird? I don't know. Maybe it's not. It's very cold. To be this cold, to have this hanging in the air, I feel like is unusual. Maybe some people from really cold areas, like up in Alaska or something, can tell me if this is normal. Like I said, this has been hanging for 5, 6, 7 hours. I'm not sure exactly when it started, but yeah. All right, so I'm Old Smokey. I'm kind of just getting started on TikTok. Look up Eating History. It's a show I hosted on the History Channel. And I've also got a YouTube page if you guys want to come follow me on there, since TikTok might not be around that much longer. All right, cool. See ya. All right, I don't know if I can stitch this video in to the one that I did earlier. It is like 6:30 in the morning now. This fog, or whatever this is, has went nowhere. It was like 3:30. 3:45, something like that, whenever I came out here and filmed it earlier. And I talked to my buddy that I worked with for years out on the river. just to see if he thought this was weird as well. And he's like, got the same thoughts about it that I do, more or less. He's like, this is not normal. It's got a really weird smell to it again. And he brought that up without me even bringing that up. It is really cold. It's like 4 or 5 degrees now. Usually when it gets super cold like it is right now, the cold knocks this type of fog out of the air. It just, I guess that's, I don't know. I don't know. I can't flip my camera around, but I'll see if I can flip it around and add another video real quick. Let me do that. All right, so here's a lot better quality with the flipped around camera, but it's even thicker, like off camera, just in person looking. It's odd. This is odd. All right, maybe I can stitch these in. If I can't, I might just make a separate video with them and talk over them or something. I don't know. But tell me what you guys think about this. Is this something that's been happening where you live? I think something weird's going on. You tell me. All right, real quick. I just wanted to come back. Look at this. You see that? This is daylight now. It's 7:30 in the morning. And it's more light out here, but not by a whole lot. Very weird. It gets daylight really early. Like, I don't know. It should look like this at like 5:30, 6 o'clock in the morning. There you go. Weird fog stuff. I don't get it. And it is cold out here, seriously. 5 degrees now. That's what it says. 5 degrees.
The point of me showing these videos is to show that people are still talking about this mysterious fog. It's just that, again, there are other news stories currently taking over. And I really do hope more and more people test this fog so we can come up with a definite conclusion that something is not right about this fog. But in any case,
Hey there, friends. I'm working on a video for tomorrow that's taking up a lot of my resources, but I did want to put something out today, very short video, that talks about some of the problems that we're seeing now start to surface and rear their ugly head out west with the California wildfires. This next clip I'm about to show you is from, I believe it's a city council meeting, but it's a meeting on talking about the budget and the massive budget cuts that Karen Bass, the mayor in Los Angeles, was proposing. Remember, she cut out $17.6 million out of the fire department's budget, not overall budget, way bigger cuts than that, specifically out of the fire department. This is a meeting where a lot of folks from the fire department, and surprisingly at the end of this video, you're going to see a city council person come forward and also talk about the dangers of doing this. Now, let me preface this by saying this. I've worked in environments where union workers were. I know how union workers embellish and exaggerate. This guy, the first guy you're going to see on this clip, says if one position is eliminated, all the bad things that can happen. We know that's a lie, and we know that's not true. We know that's bloviating, and somebody just simply exaggerating the point. However, I think on a much larger scale, they accumulated this many people who work in the fire department for this meeting. The sheer fact that this many people came together in this meeting to talk about this shows me that there was a concern outside of just overtime hours, that there was a concern of safety. And I do believe these people saw what was happening and realized they may have already been a little bit thin. Now, granted, with overtime hours, a lot of organizations, not just public organizations like this, they abuse overtime hours. So there's a lot of waste there. And a lot of people get used to those overtime hours as being part of their normal payroll. So I understand where that can hurt a family that's, say, over a long course of time, been dependent on that. But clearly, I believe there was a safety concern involved here too, because there's no way they would have had this meeting if it was simply about somebody having a couple of overtime hours cut and somebody was butthurt about it.
If we cut one position, if we close one station, if we close one resource, the residents of Los Angeles are going to pay the ultimate sacrifice, and someone will die.
Just last month, fire personnel packed an LA Fire Commission meeting, begging the city to rethink the budget.
These cuts came at exactly the wrong time, with calls for services at an all-time high and our firefighters at their breaking point.
We are straining our department's resources beyond the brink, and we cannot continue on this path.
So this was interesting to me. I mean, these people are calling this out. I want you to understand, this meeting was 21 days prior to the Palisades fire, less than a month before the fire started. Remember, at that time, they were already in their dry season, the fire season. They knew that. They were sending that warning that people might die from this. I mean, to me, to say that people are going to get mad, we might strike. I mean, if it's truly just a union message, sometimes you can decipher that. These people were talking about the loss of lives in this. And to me, this shows the ineptitude of the mayor, which, by the way, Gavin Newsom will call you a racist if you criticize the mayor, who completely screwed up on all of this. He was taking photo ops over in Africa whenever the initial warnings came out and the winds began to kick up, and was on an airplane flying back over here to cover her own butt while the hills in LA were ablaze. We are seeing evidence across the board that the destruction, the amount of destruction, could have been minimized. I'm not talking about they could have been stopped, which, by the way, if we could keep these arsonists from lighting these fires, the climate change, I didn't know climate change actually had a face and a social security number. And in fact, some cases, I don't think they have social security numbers because they're illegal aliens. But I was not aware that climate change was an actual person. I thought this was just an ideology out there. Apparently it is people. But if we could have got them to stop lighting fires, and if the mayor and the governor and whoever the blue-haired, lesbian, overweight, hair-lit person is that they hired to manage the water that they paid $700-something thousand a year, if they could have gotten all these people to do their jobs instead of having ceremonial jobs, actual jobs that had functions that they had to perform, had they done those things, I believe we would have had less of, if not maybe none, loss of lives, and certainly more homes would be standing today. Again, I don't think that nothing would have happened if everybody would have done their job. Again, we don't know the extent of the arsonist. Maybe the arsonist lit every single one. Maybe this could have been completely prevented if no one lit a fire, right? But I understand the conditions are there. But as far as not clearing the brush, reservoirs empty, all these things out there, people not doing their jobs certainly contributed to the loss of life, not just the loss of homes. I'd also like to point something else out. This, to me, based on the testimony you just saw in this video and all the proof that we've seen going forward, sounds like criminal negligence to me. Criminal negligence, remember, guys, this is kind of a referral to when a defendant acts in a disregard of serious risk of harm that a reasonable person in the same situation would have perceived. You can't use, I'm too stupid to have known better. You can't use that. Because if you are an elected official and you are deemed to be a reasonable enough person to be a mayor, then you should be held to the same account to be a reasonable enough person to be able to do your job. And when that's determined to not be the case and you made a bad decision going against all the evidence and proof and warnings that you were given, these people might be held criminally liable.
I don't understand the point that you're making.
God save the Queen, man.
I'm sorry, I thought this was America.
Hey, what is going on with y'all, man? It is Black Balloon, and I'm coming back with another video, so y'all already know what's going on. All right, y'all. Now, as y'all can tell by the title and the guy that is on the screen, today we are going to do part 2 to the LA fires, right? So, a good bit of y'all may have seen it by now, as it's, it's been going plenty viral on the internet as far as Mel Gibson and Eddie Griffin, right? So Mel Gibson was also recently on the Joe Rogan podcast where they talked about a bunch of different things. But the clip that we have in particular today for this video aired on Fox. And as usual, Mel Gibson shared his opinion since his home was obviously burned down. He shared his opinion about LA and what he thought the fires actually were and how he felt that it was possibly done on purpose. Now, we also got a very interesting clip with Eddie Griffin. A lot of y'all may know, Eddie Griffin has been outspoken his entire career. He's touched on a lot of different stuff. I guess he's similar to Cat Williams, if I'm not mistaken. Cat Williams never really said anything about Eddie Griffin. Eddie Griffin is kind of like one of those solid ones that there's not much out there about him, but just what it is, And in the clip that we have where he talks about the LA fires, he definitely tells you what it is, or at least most of what we've already been talking about and thinking ourselves, especially some of it that we've already covered in part 1, right? So y'all already know, man, I thought this would be another good video to go ahead and go down the rabbit hole of the LA fires until the truth comes out, right? So these clips will be pretty interesting, and as usual, without me doing too much talking in this intro, y'all, we'll go ahead and get into the clip with Mel Gibson. Then we're going to come back, talk a little bit more. So with that being said, y'all, check this out.
A lot of people say a lot of things about these fires. Obviously, the winds were horrific, but they were predicted. I know you know that last weekend, like Friday, Saturday, Sunday, they said this could be tragic with these winds if any fire starts.
Sure.
Do you believe in what you know so far, anything could have happened like this?
Yeah, well, one always suspects that this might happen, but one thinks that the resources, and the capabilities of the men and women will be on standby, that they'll be able to cope with any situation that comes up. But apparently, some people were asleep on the job, mainly our leaders there. But, that's something they have to live with. And but that's something that community has to live with. And it's really sad. I mean, I have many friends that are, looking for a place to put a roof over their heads, and kids, and they're traumatized. So someone should answer for it, but we'll see. I think we know who the culprits are. In fact, my son he's a member of the volunteer fire brigade. He sort of interfaces between LA County Fire and people, and they assist them where they can during, before, and after the blaze. And apparently the residents in Corral Canyon caught an arsonist up there, and the guy was all tooled up with fire gear and equipment and stuff like that, and ready to go. And he had been lighting fires, but they corralled the guy in Corral Canyon and gave him to the police. So
yeah,
there
apparently
are people actively going around looking for these conditions. Yeah,
apparently, Mel, that individual was never charged. It's a very confusing set of facts because apparently he was reportedly trying to light things on fire, but it's not the fires, I guess, that they're. I mean, it all seems very bizarre, but they have not ruled out that arson could have started the first fire. There's obviously still investigating this, and at the same time, Mel, there are numerous complaints, as you alluded to, that the fire hydrants did not have water or water pressure, and the LA fire chief herself reacted. Watch this.
My stance on this is when a firefighter comes up to a hydrant, we expect there's going to be water. We don't control the water supply. Our firefighters are there to protect lives and property and to make sure that we're properly trained and equipped. That's my position on this. So if there's no water, I don't know how the water gets to the hydrants.
Mel, reaction to that?
Well, you know, I know they were messing with the water, letting reserves go for one reason or another. They've been doing that a while. California has a lot of problems that sort of baffle the mind as far as why they do things. And then in the events like this, you sort of look, oh, is it on purpose? Which it's an insane thing to think. But one begins to ponder whether or not there is a purpose in mind. What could it be? You know, I don't know. Do they want the state empty? I don't know.
Well, Mel, there's already talk, and we played a couple of sound bites of reimagining the way rebuilding occurs. And obviously, there's a great need for high-density housing in California and across the country. That's a big push by the climate folks. And you're already hearing rumblings of that. In this case, like goodbye single-family homes, hello high-density housing.
I can make all kinds of horrible theories up in my head, conspiracy theories and everything else, but it just seemed a little convenient that there was no water, and and that the wind conditions were right, and that there are people ready and willing and able to start fires. And are they commissioned to do so, or are they just acting on their own volition? I don't know, but they seem pretty well equipped, some of these people that they're catching.
So in the beginning clip, if you caught what he said there were people actively going around looking for these conditions. So he could have meant during the fire to start more fires, or looking for the right conditions of 100-mile-per-hour wind and starting a fire so it spreads everywhere. One of the two. Basically, either or, just as bad, right? So if it's these people were looking for these conditions in the fire, they were well-equipped people, one of them being turned in to the police but not charged with arson is highly questionable. But I think that pretty much, blows it open in a sense. By now, we know it was done on purpose. By now, we know people were placed, by commission to start more fires, keep it going so it can spread and do as much damage as possible, roast everything in sight, damn near. I think we can come to agree to that by now. I guess what's the biggest theory is why. Mel Gibson comes off as like very nonchalant. He said, I feel, a lot more sorry for my neighbors than I do myself. And I took that as like, he knows what's going on. Obviously, he's on Fox. I don't think he's going to just tell it all like it is. But you can tell he really knows what's going on, the way he's answering the question and taking those really deep breaths like, yeah, I know what's going on, but let me answer this question the way I need to on Fox, So he just kind of comes off as really nonchalant and almost like he's over it. I feel like that's why he said he feels more sorry for his neighbors, maybe because they're not the position that he's in, maybe don't have the connections or see it the way that he does. And he's like, I know what's going on, but these normal people don't, they see it as maybe a natural occurring event, and it really wasn't. It really has a bigger agenda at hand, and it could be the smart cities or the rebuilding that they were talking about, land grabs. There's a lot of, theories going around, especially something that we touched on in the last video with the underground tunnels and the trafficking and everything. There's a lot of stuff going around about why this may have really happened. But, listening to that clip and just listening to the details, it really tells you everything you need to know if you're actually questioning if the fires were a natural occurrence. We know it wasn't. Like he said, the conditions were just right. 100-mile-per-hour winds. Y'all already told me that does not happen there. Just came out of nowhere. 100-mile-per-hour winds just spawned out of thin air. People walking around, setting more fires. I think there's enough proof now that we know this is not a natural occurrence, right? So we'll take this time to go into the next clip with Eddie Griffin. He talks about it a little bit more in his own way, you know, kind of like a little bit of comedy mixed in with it, but I thought it was very interesting to add to this video. So we'll go ahead and check this clip out, y'all. Then I'm gonna come back and wrap the video up, all right? Check this out.
A lot of people saying it's to cover up the pedophile trail, and all of a sudden the water ain't working. And hold on, 60% of the water rights is owned by this fucking couple. What's their name? Yeah, the wonderful company is owned by this husband and wife team. They own Pistachio, they own Fiji water. I stopped drinking any of that around the motherfucker globe. Let them motherfuckers go broke. Feeding the pistachios and almonds, all that goddamn water. Meanwhile, people's houses burning down, dying of thirst and shit. All these sons of bitches. And the regulators who allowed them motherfuckers to own 60% of the goddamn water. Fire them motherfuckers too, goddammit. What the fuck is y'all problem? That is public water. We built the dam that's holding that water and all that shit with taxpayers' dollars. How the fuck y'all gonna sign it over to this goddamn couple? Sons of bitches. Let's pray for the motherfuckers out there that houses is burning down and shit, unless they pedophiles. If they pedophiles, come let that shit burn. Cause I know what you're doing. You're burning the evidence up, sons of bitches, but we still gonna catch it. And let somebody do some research. In the rich neighborhoods, who had already left their house and knew that the fire was coming? We'll be right back after this commercial break. Leave it in the comments. There's no water pressure because somebody in the state turned the power off. And when the power's turned off, the pumps that pump the water so that there is water pressure were turned off also. I wonder who that was. And the irony of it all, that the fire looks just like the fire in Maui. Let's check all the Crip neighborhoods, because if the Crip neighborhoods are still up because they blue, we know. I don't care if you're blood, wear blue, play it safe, wear blue until this shit clears up. We'll be right back after this commercial break. Also, they fired, I heard they fired over 60% of the fireman's staff 3 to 6 months before the fire hit, so somebody knew it was coming and wanted to make sure that the houses they wanted burned down. Google 2028 is gonna say Los Angeles smart city. So the best way to get a smart city is by burning out all the residences, and then you can start fresh and build a smart city. This is what your government is doing to you. They don't give a fuck about us. As Michael Jackson said, all I want to say is they don't give a fuck about us. And another goddamn thing, State Farm. State Farm canceled fire protection on homes 3 months before the fire. Who tipped them off? Who keeps tipping off motherfuckers that a natural disaster is about to happen? Because it's not natural, it's an unnatural disaster, and State Farm need to be shut the down. Get them people their money back. They done paid in for year after year for fire home protection, and then you're gonna cancel the goddamn policy right before the fire hit. Get them motherfuckers they goddamn money or face the consequences. It's time right to bear arms. Right to bear arms. We'll be right back after this commercial break.
He's a desperate resident. Yeah, he just ran up to me right after we were on a few minutes ago. He said, please help me. Chris, tell us what's going on.
Hi, I was told that my house burnt down. I drove up, I needed to see it. I wanted to get some clothes for my son. The entire neighborhood is burnt down, but somehow my house does not even have a scratch. There's no fire damage. I went in, but the house next to mine is still on fire. So I'm going around begging anybody to come put out that fire to protect my home.
Because there's no water.
There's no water pressure. I tried to turn on the water myself. I would have tried to put it out, but I have no water pressure, so I have no way of putting it out.
So you and your wife are just trying to go get bottled water? What?
Yeah, so my wife went to get bottled water. I'm going to meet her down the hill, and we're just going to try and throw bottled water on it, but I don't know if that's going to work.
You need a lot more than that.
This is even crazier. Some of y'all may find this to be very interesting. Janice Quinones, right? She's the Chief Executive Officer, CEO, and Chief Engineer of the Los Angeles Department of Water and Power. the nation's largest publicly owned water and power utility. She leads the organization of more than 11,000 employees, delivering water and power to 4 million residents of Los Angeles. When she got her new position of chief engineer of water and power in LA, she skyrocketed to a whopping $750,000 a year salary. Now, her job is to do the exact opposite of what happened. There was no water pressure. There was no water. The guy at the end of that clip was talking about using a bottle of water, a plastic bottle of water. I don't even know why he said that. Yeah, my wife's going to get some water. We're going to throw some water bottles on the fire. Y'all, these people are doing something you would never even think about. They're trying to throw a bottle of water on the fire, desperate, saying, wow, got them thinking out of this world. Like that would actually work, because this lady couldn't even do her job. Now, it said the mayor was in Africa. She in a whole, the mayor was gone. She wasn't even there. This lady right here, she makes more than the mayor. The mayor doesn't even make $750K. Think about that. Both of them dropped the ball completely. We want to talk, political, put it on these people who are in charge, as in kind of like Mel Gibson was saying. He was like, we know the culprits. We know who's responsible. And he may have not even been talking about these two. But, we're just speaking on the facts here. This is absolutely insane. Everything adds up to this being strategic. And Eddie Griffin asked a good question. It's like, who in the rich neighborhoods moved out right before this happened? Now, I'm not sure. I couldn't verify if a bunch of firefighters got fired or laid off. Y'all remember they were talking about the budget cuts, but I think the budget was actually increased by $50 million. So that was like, I don't really know if we got down to the bottom of that, but that was a good question to ask. Who knew about this stuff? Who started moving out? Blah, blah, blah. Because obviously people knew. The mayor was in Africa. She knew what was about to happen. This one it's not a head scratcher. Maybe we won't know the exact reason till down the road, but we know this was not real. This was not nature. This is an agenda. Maybe 2028 will let us know, or how they go about rebuilding. If they actually do implement these smart cities, if this is, the intro to something even bigger, who knows? Mel Gibson was like, what? Do they want the whole state gone? There's this one. I mean, it's a pretty deep rabbit hole. It feels very political, feels very staged, planned, strategic, whatever word you want to use for it. But it wasn't what they're trying to tell us. But at the same time, they actually did tell us that these fires were started by people. I mean, if you listen, they tell you what happened. They set people around in the area that were well-equipped, fire gear on and everything, and they started these fires. Come on, y'all. Come on, there's really not much else to say. Like I said in the last video, if anything else comes out about all of
Next on deck with Tim Black.
So I want to speak about them. I know we pray for them. But also, I've been thinking about it also in the context of what I saw when I was in North Carolina, when I talked to families.
Got off that subject immediately. Yeah, let's pray for them. Okay, moving right over here. Let's talk about these other people that we didn't do shit for. Yeah, remember the North Carolina people that was... Kamala Harris went somewhere and started talking about the wildfires in LA. This is at Reverend Al's National Action Network. You know what that hug's for, right? That hug's for that $500,000 that she gave him. That's what she gave him for all his support on her campaign. I mean, not to him directly, to his organization. Roland got 350,000. I think Oprah got $1 million. And Reverend Al got $500,000. That's what friends are for.
About generations of families that have lived there. Some of the first, thank you. As you all know, I am a native Californian, born in Oakland, California. But I do want to speak about the California fires.
Went to school in Canada, left that part out. Yeah, not college either, like high school or junior high or something like. Anyway, let's keep going.
And the devastation that has occurred in Southern California because of these most recent wildfires. Communities like Altadena. You're talking about generations of families that have lived there. Some of the first hardworking Black families who were able to buy property in California and then pass down those homes through generations. Many of those families who live in those homes and live intergenerationally within a block of each other, who've lost everything.
Okay, so let's go to the part where you talk about, because you're still the vice president. Let's go to the part where you say what you're going to do about it. Yeah, let's talk about how you going to fix it. Let's not talk about the condition. See, I think a lot of people don't understand the game that they play with the Democrats. They talk about the condition that Black people are under. They talk about the condition of wealth inequality. They talk about the conditions that plague the poor people, working class people. If you're a white person, they talk about how the money ain't right, how prices are high, how the cost of living's gone up, how people feel frustrated and are losing hope in this system, but they don't talk about what they're going to do about it. Let's listen to what the plan is of the vice president. Not somebody off the street. Sometimes I'm doing a show and I'll get a comment like, all you do, Tim Black, is talk about stuff. What you gonna do to fix it? I'm in a basement, fool, with no budget. Haven't been elected to anything. Tell that to her. She's the vice president. I'm trying to pressure her and the government to do right by us. That's what I'm doing. And what you're doing is complaining to a person with an independent show that they should fix America. Meanwhile, you let the officials, the public officials who are paid, who have staff and budgets off the fucking hook. Make that make sense. Make that make sense. It don't make sense. You don't make sense. Let's continue.
So I want to speak about them. I know we pray for them. But also, I've been thinking about it also in the context of what I saw when I was in North Carolina, when I talked to families.
Got off that subject immediately. Yeah, let's pray for them. Okay, moving right over here. Let's talk about these other people that we didn't do shit for. Yeah, remember the North Carolina people that was fucked up? Remember the North Carolina people that were struggling here with a national catastrophe? Yeah, those people, oh God, it's so bad for them. I feel bad for them. Let's pray for them too.
Georgia, after most recently Hurricane Helene. And so now, as we move forward with this new year, one of the requests that I make of the leaders here is
No! What you gonna do about it? What you gonna take Joe in the back, twist his arm, kick him in his one good leg, and say, hey, let's do this now. Whatever it is. This month. See, this is why I have problems. I got a problem, y'all. I have a problem. I know I have a problem, man. I want to say I recognize I have a problem. I'm not delusional. I get it. I say things. I do. I think things and then I say them. The filter is not there. It just goes from here to here. Here to bow, 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 bow. Sometimes it go here, bow, bow. But never here, here. Write down and talk to people. Should I say this? Should I not say this? What do you think I should say? You think it'd be a good idea if I told Kamala Harris to go to hell? I mean, how bad would that hurt my reputation? Would I be able to go on shows that don't let me go on them now? Yeah, would I be able to make an appearance on MSNBC or CNN or News Nation or any of those places? Would I burn bridges? Would I be burning bridges to my...
Wrong, wrong. Just play the game. Wrong again. Play the damn game. Tim.
No! I don't think about any of that stuff. I just say what I think it is. We got Kamala Harris, Vice President Kamala Harris, first female vice president. Oh, everybody claps.
I am fully aware that I am the public face of a lot of our work. And so I have the benefit of running into people all over our country who thank me. And I will tell you, I am fully aware that when they are thanking me, they are thanking our team.
Former Attorney General, former Senator. Amazing. Everybody claps. Everyone's proud. Everyone's back is straight as they celebrate this and they have honor and belief and all this other shit. You know what she does? She doesn't talk about what she's doing, what she's going to do, what her and Joe have done, what they're going to do. She talks about the people that are going to be doing things in the future. And we got people that don't see the hustle. You know what? This is the only job you get to do that shit. Yeah, the only job you get to do in this government, where people are delusional, where people have drank the Kool-Aid. You have to. Man, do you realize if you were like a coach for a football team or a basketball team or any sporting team, and you came in and you were the coach and you were talking about what the next coach was going to do you realize that'd be your last day? You say that shit the last day that you there. You don't be talking about what somebody else should be doing. You are still, the game doesn't, look, the game is still on. We're all living. She's still the president. And, I'm sorry, vice president. And her big idea is let's talk about all the stuff that should happen in the future.
Happy Founders Day to everyone. Happy Founders Day, 117. Kappa Alpha, dear Alpha, Kappa Alpha. We all have lived part of the edict of our extraordinary sorority, and we will continue to do this work. Head up, shoulders back, with grace and with purpose and with faith and with the knowledge that we are all in this together, doing extraordinary work.
When they have the power, all they do is talk about what they could do, if it wasn't for those meddling kids. Remember that child earned income that pulled all those children out of poverty? There was a guy in West Virginia by the name of Joe Manchin that put the brakes on that. He voted against it. Did they ostracize Joe Manchin and the Democrats? Did Joe Biden say he waged war on Joe Manchin? No, he didn't. No, because that really wasn't a problem for him. Joe really didn't want to get shit done. Can't you see through it? When Trump has an agenda, he got an agenda. When Biden has an agenda, you don't know if he mean it or not. It's like, maybe this will work. Yeah. It's a wish list, or worse than that. Maybe they did not unleash the Kraken on Joe Manchin because Joe Manchin was being a good soldier by going against this initiative. Maybe, for all we know, Joe Biden could have called up Joe Manchin the night before the vote and talked his ass out of voting for it. I mean, he is a scumbag, right? I mean, please explain to me, why is it Trump rides for his shit and Biden doesn't ride for his? Trump's people was willing to bring in a guillotine for Mike Pence because Mike Pence wasn't going along with the program. No such thing is done with the Democrats. If we can't pull the rest of these poor black kids out of poverty, so what? So what? We got to be decent and respectable. See, I don't make excuses for it. I don't have time to make excuses for it. My time is better spent calling it out. You can make excuses if you want and come up with all the fantasy ideas. I got all these people that say, Tim Black, I really like you, but sometimes I disagree. Yeah, do you disagree with this? Do you disagree with the fact that your president, Joe Biden, let that opportunity pass? And we got the Congressional Black Caucus writing farewell letters about how great Joe Biden was for bringing back a percentage of the jobs that left during the pandemic.
Bunch of shoe shops.
As if those was new jobs. These are scumbags. Politics is a dirty business, but some people are dirtier.
Supporting the ceasefire deal. I'm not sure if that's true, but these new reports do unfortunately shine a light on some holes in the agreement, which could cause it to eventually fall apart. This here is from the Jerusalem Post. Let me just pull this up here. All right. The Prime Minister's office announced on Thursday morning that the IDF would not withdraw from the Philadelphia corridor during the first phase of the hostage deal on Thursday morning. Quote, contrary to misleading reports, Israel is not withdrawing from the Philadelphia corridor. Israel will remain in phase A of the corridor for the entire 42-day period, the statement said. The scope of forces will remain at its current size, but will be deployed differently, encompassing outposts, patrols, observations, and control along the entire corridor. During phase A, starting on the 16th day, negotiations will begin on ending the war. If Hamas does not agree to Israel's demands for ending the war, achieving the war's objectives, Israel will remain in the Philadelphia corridor on the 42nd day and consequently beyond the 50th day. In practical terms, Israel will remain in the Philadelphia corridor until further notice, the statement concluded. Okay, so people are saying this is Netanyahu once again backing out of the deal. The deal said explicitly that Israel is to withdraw from the Philadelphia corridor, from the Philadelphia corridor, as well as other areas of Gaza. They have to withdraw from these areas during phase one. Now, what this shows, now here's the document ceasefire agreement. And I'm just going to kind of point out this, the fourth provision on the agreement is that, and this is a specific language, and this is what Netanyahu's using in order to basically thwart this deal. So it says the Israeli side will gradually reduce the forces in the corridor area during stage one. So this is phase A, based on the accompanying maps and the agreement between both sides. So they are to, according to this agreement that's been signed, they are to gradually reduce their forces in the Philadelphia corridor. And yet Netanyahu and his team comes out and says, we're going to remain in the Philadelphia corridor until further notice. Then it says in the provision in the agreement, after the last hostage release of stage one on day 42, the Israeli forces will begin their withdrawal and complete it no later than day 50. That's in the agreement. Okay, day 42, after the last hostage has been released in phase one, Israel has to begin withdrawing all of their forces from the Philadelphia corridor, and they've got to get that done by day 50. By day 50, there should be no more Israeli forces in that area. But Netanyahu, according to the Jerusalem Post, has come out saying, I don't think so. He's saying that starting on day 16 of phase one, so well before the 42nd day when they need to start withdrawing the troops legally, according to the document, that starting on day 16, after some hostages have been released, they get to start negotiations for phase B, for phase two of the agreement. It's a 3-phase agreement. So phase two, they're going to start negotiating. And what he's essentially saying, what the Jerusalem Post, what this Prime Minister's office note said, is that if they don't get what they want, if Israel doesn't get what they want in these negotiations beginning on the 16th day, then they're not going to withdraw on the 42nd day, and they're not going to be out of there by the 50th day. So you see what's happened here? What's happened is Israel has found a loophole. Netanyahu has found a loophole. And that is, yeah, you know what? We agree to this, but if we don't like what you have to say starting on day 16, we're just going to back out of the whole agreement, is what he's basically saying here. So this is, once again, Netanyahu thwarting the deal. I mean, is it technically just yet? No, because the deal says starting on day 42, they have to start the withdrawal and they have to get out of there by day 50. And he says, yeah, we're not going to withdraw. We're not going to even start the withdrawal process until day 42. That's when we'll begin. We're not going to go any earlier than that. Day 42 is when we'll start. And we'll take all the way to the 50th day. But if we don't like what you have to say starting on the 16th day, if the negotiations don't go our way, we're not getting out of here. So he's found a loophole to get out of this whole entire agreement. So I guess don't celebrate just yet. I mean, we were all celebrating the ceasefire agreement yesterday, but now, his crafty, sneaky little Netanyahu's figured out a way to get around it. And we'll see what happens starting on the 16th day if he backs out of this deal and says, never mind, I don't like what Hamas has to say. And what is it that he wouldn't like? A lot. I mean, Netanyahu is getting a lot of flack. And this is probably why he's backtracking now. I think the Trump administration gave him a stern talking to, but now he's getting a lot of flack from the Israeli people. They're in hysterics. They're crying. They're sobbing. They're feeling like they're betrayed. They think Trump betrayed them. They're just so upset. And he also is now having some pressure from inside his own government. He's got Ben-Gvir threatening to leave the government if Netanyahu goes forward with this deal. He's saying, that's it, I'm leaving. I'll leave the government and I'll only come back if we can commit our genocide once again. Once the genocide moves forward again, then I'll come back to the government. But as long as there's no genocide, I am not here. That's what Ben-Gvir basically said. So this could be one of the reasons why Netanyahu is now kind of changing his tone. Also, I want to read this to you. This comes from Saul Sadka. This was a big post online, and this kind of summarizes a lot of the thinking of a lot of the Israelis right now. I'm seeing Ben Shapiro say really similar things. A lot of these Israelis, they're basically trying to cope with the fact that there is now a ceasefire agreement, and they don't like the agreement, so they're trying to say, we didn't lose, we've won. Hamas is lost. And I think this is really telling because it just showcases that the Israelis have no self-awareness whatsoever of what is going on here. So he goes on and says, since Hamas are now celebrating their great victory over Israel, let's review their many achievements over the last 15 months in the light of their initial goals. 1, they failed to conquer Jerusalem. Was that an initial goal of Hamas, was to conquer Jerusalem? It says 2, they failed to drive the Jews into the sea. So this is how they're thinking, right? They think that the idea, and there are certainly a lot of Palestinians that they want the land back and they want the Jews to go. They say, you don't belong here. You never belonged here. You showed up. You should leave. You should go back to where you came from. So there is that sentiment for sure. But a lot of them have, it is certainly not to, I guess, drive the Jews into the sea unless it's going to be on boat to get the hell out of there. 3, they failed to split Israeli society. Instead, they united them. I don't know if that was a goal. 4, they failed to isolate Israel. This is, again, total disconnect. He says 4, they failed to isolate Israel internationally. Even the Abraham Accords remain intact, is what he says. First of all, Israel is isolated internationally. The world is against Israel at this point. And the Abraham Accords are hanging by a thread. Yes, they remained intact. The countries that signed the Abraham Accords, that would be what? Who are the countries? Bahrain, Emirates, right? Sudan, Morocco. I mean, okay, these countries barely, they pretty much halted all diplomatic relationships with Israel during this time. So they were barely hanging by a thread. 5, they failed to harm Israel's economy, which continues to grow. Israel's economy is not doing well. That has been well reported on. 6, they failed to prove Israel was fragile. If anything, they demonstrated the opposite. Well, they demonstrated you're genocidal. 7, they failed to make the Jews flee back to Europe as Israel's population has increased by 2.5%. That is not true. Millions of Israelis fled. Millions of Israelis left for Europe and for the United States. 8, they failed to crash Israel's currency, which is now stronger. 9, they destroyed their own axis of resistance. 10, they derailed the geopolitical plans of their backers, Iran, leaving them completely exposed. 11, their once fertile land is now devastated, requiring a generation to rebuild. Look at how happy he is about that. 12, most of their homes booby-trapped and used as weapon caches are destroyed. Clearing the rubble alone will take decades. 13, their tunnel network is gone. 14, they've alienated almost all their own people. 15, they have lost 99% of their rockets and have no means to rearm. 16, their leaders are either in hell or in Qatar or both. 17, most of their fighters are dead. 18, over 5,000 of their men will face trial for war crimes. 19, they lost their fighters at a 50-to-1 ratio compared to Israeli troops. 20, more than 10% of their population has fled, and perhaps another million have lost everything. 21, they caused destruction and losses among their allies in Lebanon. 22, they are now boxed in by the IDF with no hope of resupply. And no means of harming Israelis. 23, they tarnished the reputation of the UNRWA allies, UNRWA. 24, Israel has established a presence in their territory and will maintain constant surveillance. You already were. 25, they're being extirpated from the West Bank by their own Palestinian brothers. So what other great Hamas victories can you think of, he says? Well, there's one major victory that Hamas has, and it's the only one that actually really matters in this entire thing. I mean, they lost the battle, but they have effectively won the war. The entire world, for the first time since Israel's creation 77 years ago, is against the continuation of this Jewish apartheid nation. The entire world now sees it for what exactly it is. That's the first time in decades and decades, 77 years. This is the first time the world says, wait a minute, I don't know. I don't think this is right. That's what they accomplished. That is a massive accomplishment, because what we also know is that the younger generations, the more against Israel and the project they are. So that means, Israel might have won this battle of bombing the Palestinians to oblivion, committing a genocide. The world saw that. The young people, the old people that are staunchly pro-Israel, they're going to die. They're going to be dead. I mean, you're not going to have them as your allies for long. They're not going to be around. The Mitch McConnells of the world, they're all going to be dead. And you're going to have to contend with the young people. And the young people have overwhelmingly rejected Israel and this project. Overwhelmingly. That means Israel has, as these young people rise up into positions of power, Israel has 30 years max. 30 years max before people of the world, the young people of the world who rise up in positions of power, demand an end to the apartheid state. They'll demand it. They'll say, you cannot continue on like this. And it may happen earlier than 30 years. I mean, people are starting to demand it now as the powers. I think maybe it would still perhaps take 30 years, but that's not long. That's Israel lasting for 100 years in constant turmoil and battle and constantly fearful, only to once again have history repeat itself, where the Jews are once again driven from the Holy Land. And that's what ultimately will happen, because I think now that they've exposed themselves as having completely genocidal thinking, I think that has caused a situation where I don't know, I think even the average person says, I don't know how the Israelis and the Palestinians can live together in one land in a one-state solution. That there's going to have to be, the Israelis have proven themselves to be really genocidal. So they're going to have, it may come to where there has to be a war like World War II, where ending the Nazi regime, ending the Zionist regime would happen only through a war where the world goes against Israel. And I know that right there is the biblical prophecies that many Christians point to, and they say, see, that's why we have to defend the Jews, because in Revelations, it says there will be this big battle of Armageddon. The world comes against the people and the Jewish people and all of these things. I think they have that completely misinterpreted. Quite honestly, I think that the actual blood Jewish, if you're going to believe in the Bible and all of those things, if you're going to believe in any of that, then when you look at the actual genetics of the people on the land, the most Jewish people genetically that stem from the ancient what would be the ancient actual Israelites, are actually the Samaritans, the Jordanian Christians, the Syrian Christians, the Palestinian Christians. The Christian groups are actually the most genetically Jewish, genetically Israeli, or genetically the Israelites is what I would call them, the genetic Israelites. They actually have the most genetic makeup towards, and there are some Jewish groups, certainly none of the Ashkenazis, not a single one of them. But there are some other Jewish groups that do share quite a bit of DNA, according to studies, with the ancient Israelites. But the most Israelite of all the Israelites are the Samaritans and the Christians in the region, the Arab Christians. So if you were a Bible-believing person and you believe that God made this promise to Abraham and then to Isaac and Jacob, Israel, that their actual genetics, that their bloodline would inherit this land, and that the world would come against them, that they would be slaughtered, and it would almost look like there was no hope for them, which is what I see happening to the Palestinian people, not to the Israeli people right now. You would then have to deduce that actually the battle of Armageddon and the Savior coming to battle it out for the actual true blood Israelites would be the people coming together for the actual Samaritans and the Palestinians, the Arabs. They would be the Arabs today, logically.
Joe Biden has admitted that Israel has committed grave war crimes. Not an exaggeration. This clip I'm going to show you should be treated for what it is. It is a confession of complicity in genocide. Take a listen.
When I went to Israel, immediately after their attack by Hamas, 8 days later, whatever it was, and I told them we were going to help. And I said, but Bibi, I said, you can't be carpet bombing these communities. And he said to me, well, you did it. You carpet bombed, not his exact words, but you carpet bombed Berlin. You dropped a nuclear weapon. You killed thousands of innocent people because you had to in order to win a war. I said, but that's why we came up with the UN. New deals by which what we would do relative to civilians and military.
So he was comparing 21st century war tactics, battle tactics, with World War II.
Well, what he was really doing is he was going after me for saying you can't indiscriminately bomb civilian areas, even if the bad guys are there. Even if the bad guys are there, you can't take out 2, 10, 12, 1,500 people, innocent people, in order to get the one bad guy. And he made a legitimate argument. His perspective said, look, these are the guys that kill my people. These are the guys that are all over in these tunnels. Nobody had any idea the miles of tunnels are down there. It's amazing what they built. And they're sometimes 200 feet under the ground. Well, the way to get to them is take out the places where they were under which they got to the tunnels. And so that's the first time I had the discussion about bombing civilian areas was when I went over after the 9/11, after the massacre that occurred.
So on that first trip, 10, 11 days after October 7th, you already raised the issues of how to get to a ceasefire.
Well, not a ceasefire, how to prevent innocent death.
Yes.
And then I pushed really, really hard for more humanitarian aid to go in.
When I studied history at university, they taught us how to approach source material like this from a particular time. And when you read back at the interventions of a political leader, whether it's a speech, an interview, something they wrote publicly or privately, what you're supposed to do is contextualize it. And that is not to simply take their words at face value, but to understand the purpose and real meaning. In this case, why is Joe Biden, the 46th president of the United States, on the very eve of his presidency ending, publicly declaring that he had told the leader of a foreign state he has armed to the teeth for 15 months to stop carpet bombing civilians at the beginning of what was and has been an incessant genocidal onslaught? And the answer is Biden thinks this will help his place in history. He knows history is set to return a damning indictment of his time in the White House. One poll for PBS News finds that over a third of Americans believe he will go down in the history books as one of the worst presidents ever, compared to 5% who say one of the best. That places him right down at the bottom of the league of US presidents, just above Richard Nixon and below George W. Bush. He thinks this clip will lead historians to believe that he actually did remonstrate with Benjamin Netanyahu. He did implore him to stop unleashing barbaric, indiscriminate firepower against the innocent people of Gaza. Well, this clip is damning. It is, in actual fact, a confession. If Joe Biden ever ends up, or if he did end up at the International Criminal Court, this clip alone would be sufficient to find him guilty of complicity in grave war crimes, because it proves what should be obvious, that Joe Biden knew exactly what the Israeli state was doing from the very beginning. Now, Israel has been the biggest recipient of military aid of any foreign state in the post-war era, but since the 7th of October 2023, that surged to nearly $18 billion worth since then, which is obviously a vast sum of money. The US sent thousands, for example, of 2,000-pound bombs to Israel since October 7th, despite knowing full well that they were slaughtering civilians en masse. The New York Times, which has had a dire record of reporting this horror, made clear in December 2023 that Israel was dropping 2,000-pound bombs on areas that Israel told civilians to flee to. In October 2024, a Harvard study found that between the 7th of October and the 17th of November 2023, that is in the first 41 days, the Israeli military dropped nearly 600 2,000-pound bombs with the capacity to damage hospital infrastructure or kill or damage injury hundreds of meters away. And 1/3 of those bombs identified were within dangerous proximity of hospitals across Gaza. Biden knows that the entire healthcare system of Gaza has been destroyed, essentially. Most hospitals have been violently put out of operation. Some of them just reduced to rubble, not least Al Shifa Hospital, which was the flagship hospital. They killed over 1,000 medics. He knows all this in his more sentient moments. Whilst in a recent study, for example, the NGO Air Wars published 606 incidents of civilian harm reported in the first 3 weeks of the onslaught. So Israel was in the midst of doing that when he said this. That was halfway through that first 3 weeks that Air Wars looked at. I mean, obviously that onslaught carried on. I'm just talking about this particular time frame Air Wars was talking about. They found in that time frame a minimum of 5,319 civilians were killed by the aerial onslaught in the first 3 weeks, concluding by almost every metric, the harm to civilians in the first month of the Israeli campaign in Gaza is incomparable with any 21st century air campaign. It is by far the most intense, destructive, and fatal conflict for civilians that Air Wars has ever documented. Now, this is what academics and journalists uncovered. The US security services, bear in mind, have vastly more resources to know what their ally is doing. And we can hear from this clip, which should always be obvious, Biden knew exactly what was happening. And he kept arming what are, under international law, grave war crimes. I just want to take on the comparison he brings up here that Netanyahu apparently spoke about, which you hear a lot from Israel's cheerleaders. It's a comparison with World War II. It is so disgusting, so offensive. At the outset, comparing the primitive, unguided bombs of that era with what is supposed to be one of the most technologically sophisticated militaries on earth is outrageous. Then there is the fact that the Axis powers, that is Nazi Germany, fascist Italy, Imperial Japan, and so on, directly caused 85% of all the deaths of World War II. It's not like this idea, you keep coming up, it's like, well, look at all this, we were killing mass slaughter of civilians. The vast majority of people slaughtered violently were by the Axis powers, not by the Allies. And I just want to add this as well. Let's be clear, World War II was a righteous, just war against fascist barbarism waged by the likes of Britain, the United States, and the Soviet Union. But actually, the Allies did commit war crimes. Just be very clear about this. The firebombing of Dresden, for example, that was a grave war crime, served no military purpose, and was seen as such by people at the time, I might add. And out of World War II, we had something called the Geneva Conventions. I don't quite understand why Joe Biden's talking about the United Nations in that context, the Geneva Conventions, which criminalized some of the things the Allies had done. But all of that aside, Nazi Germany was a military superpower, which was conquering the whole of the European continent, waging a war of annihilation on the Eastern Front, committing multiple genocides, of course, the Shoah, the extermination of 6 million Jews, all the genocides as well. And they had a genuine shot at world domination. The whole world dominated by Nazi Germany and its hideous allies. Gaza is a tiny slither of land no bigger than East London, which before all of this was legally defined as being under occupation as per the United Nations, under the longest siege of our time, mostly made up of a refugee population. Indeed, mostly the families of people who've been violently ethnically cleansed in 1948, people driven out of their homes, as is, not a military superpower conquering the world. Frankly, a small ragtag militant force. Not to say, by the way, that terrible war crimes weren't committed on 7th October. I've always been clear about that. I've always had more consistency on this one, unlike my critics. Clearly, the context of decades of brutal occupation, ethnic cleansing, siege, mass slaughters of Palestinians, colonization, so on, stripped away. The point is, there is no comparison. What Netanyahu said there to justify unleashing several times worth the firepower of Hiroshima on a strip of land no bigger than East London is disgusting, as you'd expect from one of the great monsters of our time. And as for that point about pushing, Biden says pushing for humanitarian aid to get in. How did that go? How did that go then, buddy boy? What did you do about it? Nothing. Nothing. 2 of your own government agencies concluded by April, so months after this pointless conversation you apparently had, that Israel had deliberately blocked humanitarian aid and was deliberately blocking humanitarian aid from getting into Gaza. Guess what? By the US's own laws that then compels the US to stop sending Israel arms. Guess what the US did? Broke its own laws, carrying on handing Israel a load of weapons. But he did have that private conversation about humanitarian aid. So who's to say that that was meaningless? Now, all the way through this horror, Joe Biden has occasionally done his hand-wringing act, and it serves one purpose and one purpose alone. And that is to try and deflect pressure, both domestically from people who aren't, let's say, that inclined favorably towards murdering huge numbers of people, as well as internationally, because lots of people around the world and foreign governments, quite understandably, think this is disgusting. So he had to do this act. 12th of December 2023. He warned Israel risked losing support over what he said was indiscriminate bombing in Gaza. What did he do? He carried on giving Israel weapons. Then, 12th of February 2024, Joe Biden apparently vented his frustration in multiple private conversations about his inability to persuade Israel to change its military tactics. And he said he was trying to get a ceasefire, but Netanyahu was giving him hell, was impossible to deal with. He was the obstacle. What did he do? He carried on giving Israel weapons. In March 2024, Joe Biden warned publicly an onslaught by Israel against Rafah was a red line Israel must not cross. Israel crossed it. What did he do? Carried on giving Israel weapons. Sorry, I don't want to be entirely unfair. Apparently, he did call Netanyahu an effing liar privately. 3rd of April 2024, when Israel killed some white Westerners by killing 7 World Central Kitchen workers. One of them was Palestinians, but clearly the fact some white Westerners were killed was a bit too much for even some in the Western media and Western politicians. So what happened then? Joe Biden said he was outraged at Israel. What did he do? He carried on giving Israel weapons, didn't he? 10th of April 2024, Biden said Netanyahu's handling of the onslaught against Gaza was a mistake and said, I don't agree with his approach. Sounded like he was some sort of detached commentator rather than the guy running a superpower facilitating the whole bloodbath. What did he do? He carried on giving Israel weapons. 28th of May, 2024, he said there is every reason for people to draw the conclusion that Netanyahu is prolonging the war for his own political self-preservation. What did he do? Carried on giving Israel weapons. I could go on. Joe Biden knows that Israel has committed multiple unspeakable war crimes in what is a genocidal onslaught. He's known that all the way through. He knows. He's not stupid. He might not be entirely with it, but he knows what they did. He has the most sophisticated intelligence agencies on Earth. He is one phone call away, pretty much, from any expert on Earth he wants to talk to. He knew, and he facilitated everything. He's a war criminal. He belongs in jail. At the very least, we must make sure he's remembered for what he is, and that's a monster. Please like and subscribe. Leave your thoughts.
Coffee. Follow me.